Welcome to this Planning Applications Committee meeting, 28th of August 2013. Are there any apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Dempster. Councillor Yin and Councillor Gilroy has apologised that she will be late.
Okay. Any members, any declarations of interest? Councillor Beck.
Item 4, Chair, as I was not a member of the Planning Committee at the last application and was not present at the site visit, I'll remove myself from that item. Item 6, given I have spoken in a previous application for the applicant when I was not a member of the committee, I've sought governance advice and been advised unequivocally that it would not be appropriate for me to sit on that, so I will remove myself from that application.
Okay, any other declarations? Councillor Hislop and then Councillor Maitland.
Chair, it would be under item 4 as well. I wasn't present at the last meeting, so I will not take part in the vote.
Councillor Maitland.
Chairman, item number 10, the applicant is a customer of a business in which I have an interest. I will leave the room.
Okay, any others? Councillor Blake.
Item 4, I also wasn't present at the site meeting.
That doesn't exclude him. Paula, could you read out who is eligible to participate in item 4?
Councillors Nicholl, Mail, Dryborough, Geddes, Maitland, McCautry, McComb, McKee, Tate, Stephen Thompson and Ted Thompson are all eligible to vote on that matter.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I couldn't quite remember. I didn't do the site visit, but I couldn't remember I was at the previous meeting, but clearly I wasn't, so item 4 I'll be the same as everyone else.
Okay. Item number 3 is Chairman will then ask the clerk to outline the permission, the procedures, please.
A note on your agenda, item 11 has been withdrawn by the applicant and will not be considered today. The procedures for this meeting are: the Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or an area planning manager or other appointed officer will make a short statement addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on point of clarification. For those applications which are in accordance with Council policy subject to public speaking, then the order of eligible parties being held will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Application Committee, and such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation, and applicants or their agents. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak in respect of the application to come forward, sit in the reserved seat and make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of committee members. When each presentation is completed, people should immediately return to their seats. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or if the application is a major development significantly contrary to the development plan or a national development, agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application. The decision notice will be issued after a period of 48 hours has passed. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered in the period specified in Council policy. These individuals have all had their registration to speak confirmed and no other persons will be allowed to speak. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order. A copy of the public speaking list is available for the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Representations on planning applications must be made on the basis of valid planning matters only. Certain matters are not minor material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and to address the determining issues. Representatives should not raise any matter without explaining why it was not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what's in the report, as members will have read the report. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, except for national and major developments, which by their nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. This should allow sufficient time for interested parties to make relevant points. The Chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long.
just for everyone's information, I'd like to know that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will subsequently be available for public listening. Right, item 4 on the agenda, minutes of meeting on the 9th of July 2013. Is that a true record? Agreed. Thank you. Item 4, continued application. The Wigtown Harbour planning application for change of use of land to form a caravan site, erection of toilet block and boathouse, erection of wooden turbine 25.5 litres waste to tip, installation of septic and wood bed, and erection of dwellinghouse. Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Chair.
Microphone, please, Barry.
Yes, it's an application for change of use to form a small caravan site, erection of a dwelling house with associated development, a boathouse, a wind turbine, septic tank and reed bed. The application was before you in July. It was deferred for a site visit. The site visit was held last Wednesday on the 21st of July. I'll just quickly take you through the slides to refresh memories. That's an aerial view of the site. Wigtown Harbour, the light coloured area is essentially where the site is, right on the side of the River Bladnoch, obviously being at the harbour. That's a view of the proposed caravan site area, taken from the south, and the caravan site is at in the southern part of the site. That's just a view over the back part, the rear part of the proposed caravan site area. The proposed toilet block and boathouse would be in the left part of that view, where you see the faraway picnic seat approximately in that area there. That's a view again across the proposed caravan site from the southeast, looking towards the river and the estuary beyond. This is a view from the northeast, looking back from the actual harbour area over the proposed caravan site area. That's a view across the harbour itself, looking towards where the house site would be. The house site would be just to the right of the access road, as you see, just left of centre in that view. The house would be to the right of that, where the slightly taller scrubby trees are. That's a closer view looking across the car park. Again, the house site to the right of the access road in that view. That's a closer view of the house site. This is a view approaching the harbour from Wigtown, coming down the access road. The proposed dwelling house would be on the left where the trees are in that view. Again, that's just a closer view of the house site from the same location. That's looking back up the access road itself from the car park. Location, site plans, 4 caravan pitches, bottom left hand corner, turbine right at the southern part of that area, toilet block and boat shed just in the northern part of the bottom element of the site, and the house in the northern part. Proposed elevations. Floor plans. This is the toilet block and boat shed and the proposed wind turbine. So the key issues here are principal intent of the caravan site in the house, flooding, historic environment and natural heritage. Advice is there are policy conflicts in all these areas and the recommendation is to approve on those grounds.
Session, folks. So, any comments to make? Councillor Dalry first.
Thanks. I think the visit to the site was actually quite useful in the fact that we saw firsthand what the issues were in that particular area. I think if the application was for just the caravan site and the toilet block and boathouse, then I don't think I would have a problem with that particular area. It's a dwelling house that I have an issue with. There are some concerns and some clarity that is required within the report itself, in that, and just talking to another councillor earlier on, that in the recommendations it has a 1 in 100 floodplain, but in the body of the report it's a 1 in 200. I'm just taking that as a typo. In the conditions of the report, I think it was condition 2 or 3, it talks about a 1 in 100. Like condition 3, there's a coastal floodplain area 1 in 100, and it talks about 1 in 200 in the main report. I just want to make sure that is a typo.
Yes, I raised this with our flood risk team and CETA, in fact, because our constraints map shows it as 1 in 100, but the consultation advice comes back and they quote 1 in 200. And when I spoke to the flood risk team, they said, yes, I was correct, it is 1 in 100, but they base all their advice on 1 in 200. So they're both correct, but as far as the constraints map is concerned, the flood risk is 1 in 100, and that has been confirmed by the flood risk team.
Thank you. Without being disrespectful, Chairman, to the applicant, I mean, I reiterate what I said on the previous occasion, that I feel, with all due respect to him, that he's done himself no favours in the way in which, you know, he's brought this application forward. My view is that there should be some, or there could be some form of appropriate development at this location. We can hear about issues in relation, for instance, to such as flooding, and yes, that's a material consideration. If you look at SEPA's comments in the body of the report, Chairman, and it's not replicated in the recommendations, it's quite clear in their view that they would withdraw their objections provided suitable mitigating, you know, proposals were put forward. And that, to me, is the underlying problem with this application. There are massive gaps in the information, you know, which we need as elected members to come to a decision, in my case at least, you know, which would give, you know, a positive outcome to it. If there's another area that immediately comes to mind, and we're talking about the amount of public money that's been spent in the harbour over the years. Since the 1980s, Chairman, where they via a special temporary employment programme, when the then Wigtown District Council and the then Dumfries and Galloway Regional Council put money, as it were, into the harbour. And I want to assure you, Chairman, if you were to go to the cross at Wigtown tonight and canvass public opinion, I'm sure that there would be a significant majority, not to say an overwhelming majority of people would say, yes, we would like to see that harbour developed. We would like to see some form of suitable and appropriately sensitive development proposals implemented and put in place there. But my problem is that, you know, I don't feel that from the information, you know, that's been provided, that where I certainly am in a position today, you know, to give the green light to that. And I do that in a matter of regret. Whether or not at the end of the day the application is refused, and I would anticipate that it will be, whether or not the applicant wants to come back and resubmit is a matter, obviously, Chairman, for him. If he's going down that route, I would urge him to get the best professional advice that he can and take matters from there. But as I say, there are certain aspects, you know, certain aspects of the recommendations that I'm not particularly happy about. I think that, you know, we for instance, we quite clearly make the statement, you know, the flooding statement and the grounds for refusal about, you know, the sort of issues regarding flooding. But there's resolution made, while it's made in the body of the report, there's resolution made in that recommendation about, you know, possible mitigation measures, etc. And I think that, you know, my concern is that, you know, if we refuse this today, as inevitably, in my view, we will have to, I really want to see these recommendations for refusal operating as a barrier, as it were, in relation to future such applications. So, as I say, I make no apologies, Chairman, for filing that up at the moment. You know, I accept the rationale behind what's being said. I accept at the end of the day, where is there an issue, Chairman? No? Oh, okay. But I accept exactly where we're coming from. But when all is said and done, I would like to think that, you know, in appropriate circumstances, with a future application, if it's decided to come forward, that this site is available, as it were, or could be available for the appropriate form of development. I would cite out a parallel case involving the harbour as well. Dallas and Community Council, no less, took the attitude that, you know, English homes, building houses down in the harbour, no problems. Being Dallas, of course, they made the point, it's a working harbour, and at the end of the day, we want to see it as a working harbour. Whereas a lot of people in the open area will tell you that they would like to to see this brought back to the status of a working harbour, and that's achievable and doable. One final point I would make, sir, and again without being disparaging to the applicant in the slightest, I can't understand why, in fact, there was a turbine incorporated into these proposals, because to me that's a totally disparate element and doesn't lie at the end of the day with the wider issues. That's obviously a matter for the applicant, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, any other comments on this? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Having taken part in the site visit, I struggle to understand why a house would be necessary, to serve as a caravan site of 4 caravans. I appreciate all the comments that have been made by Councillor Geddes in terms of developing the harbour, but I can see no grounds for actually trying to approve this application, and I believe that it should be refused on the recommendations contained in the report.
Okay, Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. Policy dictates that a caravan site development should be associated physically with farm buildings or an existing hotel. Unfortunately, this proposal does not. The caravans are not associated either with the existing farm or the hotel. But the other proviso is it should form part of a comprehensive recreational scheme. And had that element of the proposal been highlighted, I think we would perhaps have been looking at this in a rather different light. You have a harbour, there is potential for development there, but unfortunately the proposal does not stress that potential.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Any other people wish to add anything? Right, we've got a recommendation to refuse. Is anyone otherwise minded? No? Okay, Paul?
The committee has determined to refuse the application on the grounds as set out in the report.
Thank you. Item 5, erection of 5, number 1 turbines, 81 metres to blade tip, anemometer mast, 55 metres high, control building, turbine transformers, and associated access track and works at Knockman Hill, Milnmark Farm, St John's, town of Dalry. Mr. Clapworthy. Sorry.
Sorry, but given that you've got a recommendation here, A and B, we're looking for agreement between the NATS and the planner, the people that's wanting this, the wind turbines. Is it a planning thing that we need to make a decision today, or should this be deferred until such time as they've got the NATS agreement? I know it's a chicken and egg situation and makes it difficult.
Thanks, Chair. Just to answer that, the present situation, obviously, as you can see in the report, is that that's object. My understand is identified aviation mitigation measures which may be possible, but obviously without the confidence of having a decision from committee, it's going to inhibit the applicant from actually progressing any kind of meaningful arrangement with that. So the recommendation is structured in this way so that they have a degree of confidence. If members go to the recommendation, obviously it would give them hopefully a sufficient degree of confidence to arrange a solution with NATS, and there'd be a time scale for them to do that, so it's a prerequisite before the council would actually formally issue the permission that we would expect them to demonstrate that there was an agreed mitigation measure or series of measures in hand with NATS.
Okay. Mr. Clapworthy.
Thank you. I'll just point some corrections that I've identified in the report. Paragraph 4.213, reference to proposal under plan reference 06P203, I think it's the top one there. It should read 17 by 125 metre turbines.
not 85. However, it shouldn't even be in the list because it was actually assessed as part of the cumulative assessment in the submission and in the preceding paragraphs by the Council Landscape Architect anyway, so it wasn't supposed to make it onto the list, and then when it did, it was incorrect. So just to correct that. And secondly, condition 4 recommended, it should refer back to condition 3 and not condition 2 as stated. The details of the proposal and the constituent elements are summarised at paragraph 1.4 in the report. Essentially, it's for the development of five turbine wind farm to be installed and then generating electricity for 25 years. The site is identified as falling within an area of search for medium-scale turbines. That's 50 turbines between 50 and 80 metres. In the Council's interim planning policy. Where turbines fall within 5 metres of the cut-off height, just bear in mind these are for 81 metre turbines, the assessment the guidance should be taken into account for both typologies, so in this case it should be for the large, which strictly and technically falls within, but also for medium scale turbines because it's within 5 metres of the cut-off. The landscape and visual assessment submitted with the application and the Council Landscape Architects find that the site would support the scope for turbines of this site. So just to take you through the slides. That's the site. Turbines to be arranged to the north and west of the upper slopes of Knockman Hill, the peak just being slightly forward from the turbines, so the slightly to the north and to the west of the peak. Commercial plantation there to the east, and a new access track that would be taken off an existing access track off the A702 public road. That's a typical turbine, 81 metres to tip, 55 metres to hub, with a 52 metre rotor diameter, with a transformer housed at the base of the tower. Typical net mast, in this case it's a lattice tower type, 55 metres in height, to be located east of Knockman Lock or west of the westernmost turbine. That's a typical detail for a control building. It's indicative at this stage and would be subject to further agreement should the application be approved. That's the zone of theoretical visibility out to 10 kilometres. The orange indicates visibility of 5 turbines. Obviously that's the most prominent colour there. It assumes a bare earth scenario, doesn't take into account any features on the ground. In this case is the extensive areas of plantation forestry, so obviously in reality this wouldn't be the visibility that would be achieved. ZTV then to hub, again orange indicates visibility of 5 hubs of the. That doesn't tell us much on that slide, but that is the applicant's assessment, what was taken into consideration for cumulative assessment at the time of the application when it was submitted in January 2010. So just to take you through slides of the site, that's the existing field going into the site that would be utilised and improved off the A702. We're looking east there, with obviously you can see the plantation forestry on the south side of the public road and distance. That's looking back the opposite direction towards Dalry. Again, there's the existing field access. That's the existing access as it winds its way into the site. This is a view from the A702 from the public lay-by. That's Knockman Hill there in the horizon. The square box generally indicates the extent of the turbines as you'd see them there on the hill. White cairn, which is a scheduled ancient monument and is discussed in the report, you can possibly make it out. It's just on the right-hand slope of Knockman Hill as it falls down towards the plantation forest. So you can see a mound there just in front of the trees. That's Wigtown, as seen from the public road. This is these images now from actually within the site, and when I took this image, I'm slightly forward of the southernmost turbine, so I'm further south. This is from the actual peak of Knockman Hill, so I'm at a slightly more elevated position and more southerly than the most southernmost turbine. And in that image I'm pointing out the nearest property to the south, which is called Milnmark. Oh, you'll see an image of that property later. That's just pointing right from the peak, Milnmark down the left, and then a further property it's 1.4 metres. Milnmark's 1.1 kilometres from the site, the nearest turbine. Generalist is around 1.4 kilometres from the nearest turbine. That's looking west towards Milnmark Farm. Now this is from a point to the northwest of the site, on the shores of Lochinvar, and again the box indicates the general extent of the turbines as that appear on that hill from the northwest. This is going back to a cluster of dwellings known as Corridor. This position I'm just off the public road, the A702, looking back into it. Rolling bank that I pointed out previously is just on the right. You can see the chips, the stone chips leading into the drive to that property. These are the next nearest properties as the line falls away, and obviously you can see the tree cover there. That's Rolling Bank. That's the front elevation facing north across the A702 and back towards the site. And this is an image. It was the best image I could produce out of the environmental report. You can see on the it's a before and after scenario as a photo montage. The top image shows the current situation from the northwest across Lochinvar, and then the bottom image shows the situation where the turbines are erected, and you can make them out there just very limited scope across the higher part of Knockman Hill from the northwest. That's the images. The Council's landscape architects found that the proposal is acceptable in principle, and that with some modification to the layout of turbines 2 and 4 and the access track and the control compound, that the scheme would not have any unacceptable landscape visual or cumulative impacts. These changes can be achieved will be achieved with some of the conditions that we've recommended to be attached. All of the material considerations have been assessed, and the proposal has been found to be acceptable in all regards and therefore compliant with the stated development plan policies, subject to the matters that are set out in the recommendation. Nothing else to add at this point.
Okay, so any questions from members for Mr. Clockworthy? Councillor Dick.
Can I just have a clarification on the area of the map that shows the visibility areas in orange? Can it just be clear that you're suggesting that is the areas in which you would theoretically be able to see it without the impact of forestation? So am I right in saying that you were saying that if you took the forestation into consideration, that would probably diminish the amount of area from which you could see the turbines?
Yeah, it assumes a bad earth scenario, so no features, no vertical features at all on there, so that's a maximum scenario, which in reality is never the case.
Any other questions? Councillor Darby. Just coming back to the recommendations, or the conditions of the recommendation number 5, it talks about if any wind turbine fails to produce an electricity supply to local grid for a continuous period of 9 months, then it will be deemed to have ceased to be required, and unless otherwise agreed right with the planning, the wind turbines shall be dismantled. Is that another application that we've had before?
Yes, it's a fairly standard condition. It just means that, in other words, if a wind farm is no longer functioning, it really shouldn't be there.
Councillor Whiteley?
It's just on paragraph 4.2.1 and 4.21. I'm just confused as to why Black Craig is not here.
Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, 4.19, it's considered Black Craig, and that's something the Council's landscape architect looked at. When it came to 4.21, the error was my own in terms of introducing Margrave and about point 3 applications awaiting determination, because obviously the Council landscape architect had done that already. So the Margrave one shouldn't appear there. So basically, if you look at 4.19 and 4.20 of the report, the landscape architect's done an assessment of the proposal in relation to the closest wind farm developments, whether or not they've been granted permission or they're still within the planning system, if you like.
Okay.
I'll look at it again. I don't understand still why it's not actually mentioned in the list there, that's all. Right, okay.
Councillor Cobb?
Thank you, Chair. Black Craig has been approved. Could you tell me what the separation distance is between Black Craig and the application site?
It's not something that we've specifically looked at as a way of assessing cumulative impact. We can look at, we've got the environmental report here, and we can look at that and we can confirm that, but just obviously not right at this moment because I need to find the relevant details.
I have looked at the map. The separation distance is of the order of 2.5 kilometres.
Mr. Duncan?
Chair, can I just clarify, you're seeking clarification from Officer Sale as to the separation distance?
I think Councillor McComb would like that, yes.
Okay, thanks. It's something we don't have an easy answer. We need to go out and measure the map as well before coming back with an answer to that question.
I think, Chair, in view of cumulative concerns, we really do need to know what the separation distance is.
Okay, I shall be Mr. Sutton when we get that before we come to determination. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Any other points, questions for the officer at this stage? Okay, we have some speakers on this item, and the first speaker is Anna Blythe. If you could take your seat, madam, and somebody will instruct you. Tracy, could you see, make sure the lady knows how to operate this system?
Okay, thank you.
You have 3 minutes, Mr.
Yes,
Blythe.
I'm Anna Blythe from Dranister, representing all the residents at Corridew. Good morning. As I only have 3 minutes, I propose to focus on 2 major issues: turbine positioning and noise. The Ramsays have a very large farm stretching for several miles in all directions. One wonders why they have chosen at this site, just over 1 kilometre from the only habitation on their boundary, namely ourselves and the 4 houses at Corridew, especially when this contravenes the recommended minimum 2 kilometre distance from the nearest habitation, and in the case of the Noise Abatement Society, who have greater understanding of the noise issues, 10 miles from the nearest habitation. Would it not be better to position it close to the waterboard treatment plant at Lochinbar, thus only having one industrial site within this rural community? I have requested a meeting with them to show me exactly the proposed location of the turbines and relocation of turbines 2 and 4, but they have failed to respond. I may say, at the initial meeting with the neighbours held in my house to discuss the implications of this proposal, Jim Ramsey did mention that they were intending constructing two 20-metre turbines behind their steading for the supply of electricity to the farm. Of course, we had no objection to this, but in the event, they were not installed behind the steading, but on top of hillocks on either side of the A702, right in the middle of the most stunning view of the Rings of Kells. Welcome to Galloway, all tourists from Edinburgh. Beware of photomontages, as these 20-metre turbines are right in your face as you drive along the road, and I can also see them from my sitting room window. But if you photograph them, they hardly show up in the picture. A photomontage does not reflect the actual visual situation. Since the building of the Weather Hill wind farm north of Molly Ive, I and others have suffered from constant low-frequency noise. I cannot tell you how disruptive this is to one's quality of life, particularly during the night. The noise is a relentless drone which sounds like a distant generator. It is a form of torture, like a constantly dripping tap. About 6 years ago, the Environmental Health Department measured this low-frequency noise, confirms its presence at about 20 decibels against the background noise of 15 decibels. This proposed wind farm will sound like a noise engine running constantly outside my bedroom window. There are several fault lines running under southwest Scotland from Northern Ireland. It is my contention that noise from wind farms travel along these fault lines and disturbs residents living above. No scientific study of the noise situation is taken and is long overdue. Without it, there is an incomplete picture in regard to the noise that will be created by wind farm proposals such as this. I did have something else I wanted to say.
I'm sorry, you've had 3 minutes to 19 seconds. So. Any questions for Mrs. Blythe? Councillor Bell? I'll just ask the question about the noise and environmental health where it actually went on. But when did they actually do that? And what was the sort of response you got from them?
It would be about 5 or 6 years ago. They said they weren't consultants and that we would need to hire our own people to do to research the actual source of the noise. But I think the Noise Abatement Society, and there's an awful lot of that's been written and researched about noise in all countries in the world that have wind farms. This noise disturbs people living, really quite close, or even a distance away. The noise seems to travel underneath the ground, and it's absolutely awful. I can't tell you how bad it is and how it has affected my health actually, and so much so that it just drives me out of my home. About every month or so I have to leave for several weeks and come back. It builds up. You actually don't hear it for about a week. It's a very, very subtle thing. And then after you've been in the house for about a week, you hear this noise. And then it just gets worse and worse. It seems louder. There's a build-up until you can't stand it any longer and you have to leave. And I think this, potentially will affect the health of everyone in this area because we're being supplied with wind turbines.
Any other members wish to ask any questions of Mrs. Blythe? No? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Blythe. You can take your seat. We now have Alison Chapman, on behalf of Bush Mackintosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have 3 minutes, madam.
I'm speaking on behalf of Bruce Mackintosh, a resident at Burnside, Corridor. My family has lived in and loved this part of Galloway for a long time, owning a cottage at Corridor and some of the land bordering the proposed development site for 36 years. Our cottage would be 1.1 kilometres from the nearest turbine in the proposed development. The other 3 dwellings at Corridor would be about the same distance away. For turbines as big as those indicated, this is far too close for acceptable sound pollution. European standards are usually in the 2 to 3 kilometre range, but serious sound pollution can be an issue at up to 4 or 5 kilometres away. Visual pollution for those driving up the A702 will be significant, especially for those travelling in a northeasterly direction. Culling of larch trees because of disease has started in our area. The Forestry Commission has told us that this will certainly spread to our land over the next years. The enforced taking down of many mature larches will much reduce the screening effect to the north. This would then expose us more than is currently evident to the direction of the proposed wind power station. Galloway, together with the rest of the southwest corner of Scotland, represents only 5% of the land mass in the UK, but has over 25% of all onshore power station developments. A similar land area in the southwest of England has less than 1% of such intrusive developments, and unbelievably has much better wind supply. Enough is certainly enough. The assumption that wind turbines were a good thing to front up the drive for cleaner power has been challenged many times by independent investigative workers. This reveals that in the real world, as opposed to the outcomes predicted in the wind power industry, electricity grid systems are increasingly made less efficient the more wind power is added. This result is that little, in some cases, no savings in overall carbon emissions are being made. Not only are no carbon emissions... Okay, can I just finish? No carbon emissions are being saved, but there are not even any reductions in the total amount of gas or coal being burned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Chapman? Any members wishing any questions? No? Okay. I understand that another requesting to speak on behalf of Galloway.
Yes, Galloway Landscape and Renewable Energy, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Caroline, another 3 minutes, madam.
Right. Section 1.3 of the committee report is factually incorrect when it refers in the singular to the nearest dwelling not financially involved being Corridor, located 1.1 kilometres to the southeast of the nearest turbine. In actual fact, Corridor comprises 4 residential properties: Rollbank, Corridor Cottage, the Dalry House and Burnside, in addition to Dwellinghouse. I've already spoken about the larch disease. Claire urges any councillor, having read the comments at 4.28 of the committee report, who is unsure of the massive impact on the natural environment and the quality of life of the residents, to make a site visit before making any decision. The intrusion into people's homes of moving, illuminated industrial electricity plant with associated noise nuisance from infra and ultrasound as well as flicker, even if the developer's estimate at committee report 4.31 is to be believed, is not justified by carbon emission savings predicted by the developer. Under EU directives, the competent authority making a decision on a planning application for an energy project has a defined legal obligation to undertake an environmental impact assessment independently. In the case of this application, has this been done? And if so, where has it been published? There is an environmental report, but it is dated 2009 and emanates from the developers. Claire can find no independent assessment of potential CO2 savings, for example, against which to judge the developer's claims. In addition, under the Aarhus Convention, the competent authority must demonstrate how they have taken into account that assessment, and also show how they have taken into account the submissions from the public prior to making a decision. In the case of this application, the submissions were made in 2010, and that is a very long time ago. Under the same European directives, councils should respect the overarching premise, which is the premise of proportionality. We respectfully urge councils to take this principle of proportionality into account in making their decision and weigh what can possibly be gained from this proposal against what will most likely be lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Committee? No? Okay. Thank you. You can take your seat. Thank you very much. We now have Emily Piston on behalf of Claire Edwards. Each place needs 3 minutes.
Good morning, my name is Emily Peaston. I'm a friend and colleague of Claire Edwards. Claire is currently on holiday and therefore has asked me to read out her letter of support for the Knockman Hill wind farm on her behalf. I came to Natural Power approximately 6 years ago, fresh from university after a short spell and temporary job at my hometown of Bankery. I moved to St Johnstown of Dalry, and after just a few months, having settled into the area well, I bought my first home in the village. As well as job security at Natural Power, I was taken by the close-knit community and soon came to enjoy attending the local church services and supporting the social networks that support them in my spare time. As stated in my original letter of support for this proposal, Natural Power, the lead consultants who are appointed as local company to assist and advise the Ramsays throughout this project's development, are a valuable business for a small rural community like Dalry, bringing many young people and their families to the Glenkens. As a local resident, I welcome the chance for our area to produce electricity for national use, contributing towards the targets for renewable energy generation and assisting in ensuring the security of supply for our energy needs. Not only does this proposal address sustainable electricity generation, which can only enhance economic sustainability for the future generations of the Ramsays family farm, but also provide a much-needed economic boost to the wider area of the Glenkens by enabling the extended use of local services, contractors and facilities. Furthermore, I believe, and as validated by committee report and officer's recommendation, this project has been well sited, sensitively designed and takes due regard to the surrounding landscape, visual amenity and other environmental considerations. I am therefore respectfully asking that you support our community and grant planning permission for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Any questions, Councillor McCosker? I just wonder, this is Claire Edwards speaking as a local resident or speaking as an employee of a wind turbine company?
I suggest both. A local resident having bought a home in Dalry, but she also works for Natural Power as well, a consultancy company too that represents developers.
Seems a bit of a conflict there. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Could you tell me how many permanent jobs Wind Power has created in the Glenkens?
There's at least 90 people working in the greenhouse in the Glenkens currently, so between 90 and 100, somewhere in those lines.
Are these people all working in wind energy?
A mixture of wind, wave and tidal, offshore wind, onshore wind, yes. So they're all in renewables and many in the wind side, yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Pearson, Councillor Hazlitt?
How many jobs would be affected with this wind development within Natural Power or the local community? Because my understanding Natural Power covers more than just one wind farm.
Yes, Natural Power does obviously cover more than just one wind farm. This proposal supported a project manager through a development phase and will go on to support construction jobs at Natural Power as well as local contractors in terms of civils works. So.
Okay. No further questions? No, you can take your seat, Ms. Pearson. Thank you. We now have Jim Ramsay. for 3 months.
Ramsey and Sons is a local family business. We've been farming at Milnmark for 37 years and currently 5 members of the family work full-time within the business. We trade with and utilise many local businesses and contractors and have a strong ethos of buying locally. In addition to the production of green energy, a successful outcome to this farm diversification proposal will be to broaden the farm income stream and to secure the overall business by helping to remove some of the risks in being reliant solely on primary upland livestock production and allow for future business development. As locals living, working and bringing up young families, the partners in the business are obviously fully committed to the Glen Cairns. Family members are involved in many aspects of local life through organisations as diverse as the local school parent council through to local agricultural societies. Within the Glen Cairns, 2 of the main industries which are keeping young people in the area and children in our schools are farming and renewable energy in the form of natural power, who currently employ, as Amy has just said, between 90 and 100 staff at the Glen Cairns office. This proposal has been conceived and designed in the Glen Cairns, and it brings these 2 local industries together, and the successful development of it will create further opportunities for our local businesses. Through discussions with the council landscape architect, we have acted to mitigate concern raised on a local landscape issue by micro-siting turbines 2 and 4 further downslope and further away from the Currydale area. We believe this proposal is well designed, and an important point to note that these are not 120 metre plus turbines being proposed elsewhere in the region. At 81 metres, the proportionate to their setting and significance in the committee's report, the site is an area of search for wind energy and conforms to local planning policy. We welcome and concur with the recommendations of the Planning Committee report and accept the conditions attached, and would urge the committee's adoption of it as recommended. In answer to one of the points that's been raised by the previous speaker, I live opposite Drumanister where Mrs. Blythe lives, and neither me nor family hear this noise that she hears. And at the meeting she mentioned that I attended at her house. I spoke with the question was asked around the room, and the only person who could hear it was Mrs. Blythe, and her husband can't hear the noise either. So, and as to the background noise being measured by the environmental health, background noise for wind and trees is around 25 decibels. The Manister surrounded by trees, so...
You've 30 seconds, Mr. Rowland.
The normal background noise is there. And one other point I would maybe like to correct, Bruce McIntosh doesn't live at Currydale. Currydale community is basically a collection of holiday homes, second homes, and there is no permanent residence at Currydale. As I say, it's 4 houses surrounded by trees, but we're respectful of these people's that like to come and live there or holiday there now and again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Any questions, Mr. Ramsey?
Mr. Ramsey, I think it was Mrs. Blythe who mentioned earlier with regard to the fact that you have a large farm and there's opportunities elsewhere. What was the reason that you picked the current site and not used maybe the possibility? I think it was deemed Lochinvar, which is a sort of man-made industrial area in a rural area. Why wasn't something like that chosen to maybe take into account the 2 kilometre distance between properties? I'm not sure if there's more properties near that.
Well, to answer the first point, it was well chosen, I believe, that it's on the back side of the hill. It's well away. There are other properties in the C51 road that it would bring it closer to. As I say, that these houses at Currydale sit within a basin in the forested area, and with working with the landscape architect, we've agreed to move them. Turbines 2 and 4, the ones that was seen most prominently, further back. Now, the landscape architect has pointed out that taking them further back on the angle of the hill, you don't need to move them that far. You're making a big difference with the shape of the hills and the angle of view. So we believe that it's well sited within the farm as best possible sited, in fact. other questions, Mr. Ramsey? No? Okay, Mr. Ramsey, thank you very much. You can take your seat. Thank you. I have no further speakers on this. I've no further speakers on this. Mr. Duncan, you wish to say something before we go to session?
Thanks, Chair. With your permission, I think it's an opportunity I want to clarify the distance between the West Barkside turbine and Knockman Hill turbine.
Yes.
Thank you. When we looked at this, the separation distance between the downsizes of the two nearest turbines of the schemes is 2.76 kilometres, which translates to, according to my arithmetic, 1.69 miles, and that's between the two nearest turbines of the proposal.
Okay, does that satisfy Councillor McCall?
Yes, Chair. My distance was based upon the separation distance between the wind farm boundaries.
Okay. Right, we're in the session committee. Councillor Dick?
I just ask for a bit of clarification on something Mrs. Chapman had said regarding independent impact assessment, but the obligation to have one, or has there been one done? Maybe just comment on that, please. That was the environmental impact assessment and the carbon reduction. I'm not entirely sure whether that's a planning consideration, but if I could get clarification, please.
Mr. Sotty?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I could refer members to paragraph 111 on page 38. That sets out the fact that a formal screening opinion was sought on this. The view was taken that an environmental impact assessment would not be required. So on the basis that there's no EIA required, there's certainly no need to get an independent one done.
Councillor McKay,
I'd like him to repeat what he said there, but I'd also like to ask, with conflicting views here on noise and different things like that, is there any way we can get, and I'm going to say independent, and I mean independent not through any company or people related to the wind farm industry, that we can get independent advice with regards to noise and that type of thing? Because, as I say, we're getting conflicting views here. One person says that there is a noise and somebody else says there's no. We need to know and what sort of distance that noise is kind of relevant to in the house, what sort of distance it travels, if you like. And we need that, as I say, independent advice, not taken from any applicant or agent or anybody like that. I don't know if we've got somebody in the council that could do it for us, but I think it's important that we get our own advice instead of relying on the applicants and agents providing it for us. And if you could just say what you said again about EIAs, I'm not quite clear when you get these things out why they're refused and all that sort of thing, please.
Mr. Sotty.
Okay, taking the latter issue first, there is a process to be gone through to establish whether or not an environmental impact assessment is required. Certain things fall within Schedule 1, which means they automatically require. They're large developments, such as, say, nuclear power stations. They're automatic. In Schedule 2, there's a list of thresholds, and it is then up to the planning authority to assess whether or not any individual proposal is going to have a significant impact on the environment, which is the test for whether a formal EIA, environmental impact assessment, is required. That is what's called the screening opinion is sought, and we have to give an opinion on that. And what I was referring to, paragraph 111, is basically saying that that process was gone through and it was identified that a formal environmental impact assessment was not required. So there is no EIA for this application, but notwithstanding that, the applicant was requested and did submit a substantial amount of information to allow the application to be considered properly. In terms of noise issues, well, the council already employs environmental health officers, and in paragraph 2.7 you've got their response. So they've had a look at the application and the information. If there's any doubt about the quality of the information that's been provided, then they do go back and seek clarification on that. Noise is a subjective matter, as we've heard from Mr. Ramsey. Some people hear things and get bothered by it, other people don't. What environmental health officers look at is whether the noise is likely to, in all probability, cause a problem. Would it cause a statutory nuisance? All these sort of criteria. So they do rigorously look at that. And we also note that there's a number of conditions about noise which are recommended at the end of the report as well.
Councillor David. That's precisely the point I was about to make, Mr. Chairman. We have in fact got independent assessment, i.e. in the form of our environmental standards officer to deal with this issue. We do hear from time to time, though, Chairman, the issue of the 2 kilometre limit. What standing does that have?
As part of the SPP, the Scottish Planning Policy, they are looking again at that very issue, but my understanding is it is not to any individual property, it's specifically to towns, villages and settlements effectively, rather than any individual property. And it's advisory, it's not compulsory. Thank you.
Councillor Dick.
No, Councillor Geddes just covered the point about the environmental officer. That's why I understood that the assessment had been done by our own environmental standards officer in relation to noise.
Councillor Whiteley.
Just a couple of questions, please, Chairman. The issue of the switchgear and metering building, which is outlined on paragraph 1.4 on page 30 of our papers, it talks about a building which I think is probably roughly 65 by 33 feet at its largest. And this compound is to be enclosed by a steel palisade fence. And I would just say, is that absolutely essential? And why is it in the conditions? It's not totally clear to me about why we can control what's happening with respect to this, because I don't know about you, but I don't think actually a steel palisade fence put in the middle of Galloway is actually particularly appropriate. You wouldn't expect it around an agricultural building. And I would question why that would have to be the case. Have we got control over it? That's the first thing. The second thing is, when does the temporary construction compound come down? I'm not completely clear about that in the conditions. Were we to agree this? And finally, the issue of lighting. My usual problem about infrared being actually our baseline rather than simply red lighting. I think we've got a condition on that. I'm pretty sure we can, but I think it shouldn't be either or. I think it should be quite clear about what we want to achieve as best practice on lighting anything of this. Were we to agree this?
The control compound in the building suggested is a suggestion, it's indicative only. Condition 11 would require agreement with that, including boundary treatment. The landscape architect has also suggested that be recited, so that would be subject to agreement of repositioning, and the condition suggests it should also be a more sympathetic design and would require also the boundary treatment. Condition 6G, condition 6G requires, as part of the whole package of measures to be agreed, the timetable for the restoration and reinstatement of temporary working areas. There is a condition regarding aviation lighting for the stated turbines. I think it does give an either or, but clearly, because it can be either or, it'd be within your gift to determine whether it's one or the other or both.
Mrs. Maitland?
May I come back? Certainly it's conditioned, but I think we would like to know as a committee about what we would be really expecting with respect to boundary treatments. What I'm basically saying is that I don't think this committee would be very pleased if it turned out that officers decided that a palisade fence was an appropriate boundary treatment. And so I'm just wanting to be sure that that would not be the case. Do you see what I mean? We would be giving officer discretion, and I'm simply suggesting that that should not be the level of officer discretion, a steel palisade fence in the middle of the countryside. So that's what I'm just asking, Chairman, through you, if I might. Equally well about infrared lighting.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly, the wording of condition 11 is quite strong there. It's saying, notwithstanding the details in the plan, no permission is hereby granted for relocation of the details of the control building or compound. So, if we've got a clear steer from members that palisade fences are inappropriate, the relevant officers are here and have heard that, so would ensure that was taken forward. Similarly, the condition of lighting, condition 27, we were taking that on the basis of the observations made by the MOD at the time. This is quite a hard application, obviously, because of the NATS issues, which is why it's taken so long to come to committee. But I think it's a fair point. When I read through this report, initially clearing it, it went through my mind as well, should we not be actually overriding what the MOD are saying to make it more consistent with recent things. So I would have no problem about any approval being subject to a tweak to condition 27 to make it infrared only. But just to be clear, that's not what the MOD have actually said or insisted on this occasion.
Mr. Gaddis. Thanks, Chairman. With respect to Mr. Sutton, I don't necessarily accept that, in relation to clause 27, we're talking about a tweak. My understanding, in fact, is that this committee has previously, some months ago, taken the decision, in fact, that where such lighting is to be provided, it will be infrared lighting. It will not be any other kind. And I would suggest that should be reaffirmed, and it should, in fact, be reflected in all future such recommendations for grant. I have no problems with Councillor Maitland's suggestion in relation to paragraph 11. I would direct your attention, sir, to paragraph 4.60, which to me sums up just exactly the issues to be looked at. Material considerations should be related to the development and use of land. In conclusion, the proposal is considered to comply with the stated aims of the development plan, and in the absence of any material considerations to indicate otherwise, the proposal is recommended for approval. I would suggest that we adopt that recommendation, sir, on the basis detailed, subject to the two minor alterations that have already been indicated, and I would move accordingly. Thank you.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, just a few meetings ago, we raised the issue about the cumulative effect. We sit here and look at these in isolation, which we're supposed to do, each thing on its own merit. But we've had to get some statistics about the proportion that Dumfries and Galloway is taking. As a member on the committee, I have no idea, because I thought we'd agreed somewhere that there'd be some background information about the cumulative effect, so we don't ask questions like we've done just to know about the kilometres between wind farms. And I thought we'd agreed that. So the statistics quoted today, are they accurate? I mean, I'm just trying to get in my head, so if we don't have some sort of overview before we'd have no land left, it would be all covered in turbines. We need to know as a committee where there is a saturation point and when that's reached. I think we've raised this before. So it's just a general inquiry, Chair. I thought we'd agreed to have some background information where wind turbines and proposed wind turbines would see them, so we could get it without asking the question, if you like.
Mr. Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Well, basically, I'd refer you to page 53, 54 and 55 of your agenda, where that's exactly what the case officer's done. He's giving you details about the cumulative visual impacts. I don't think it would be appropriate for us as officers to say that certain areas have reached saturation point and that's it, there shall never be anything there. Everybody's entitled to submit an application, and we then have to assess each one of their merits in the context of where they are. So that's really what's been done here. We have highlighted the other ones which are in that area and the landscape architect's advice in that context. So I'm fairly satisfied that you do have a robust assessment there of the cumulative issues.
Councillor Dick.
Yeah, it's just my understanding is that was the reason for having an interim plan, so that planning officers can give us a clear guidance according to that plan, and I'm fairly satisfied that this one complies with that, and would second Councillor Geddes.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going back to recommendation 11 that Councillor Maitland was on about. Have you any idea, has the planners any idea where they see this building being constructed? I'd be concerned if they were looking at the top of the hill. I would hope it's going to be built somewhere that it's not going to be visually prominent. Could I ask a question on, I see you're wanting a developer to ensure a restoration bond. Would that be yours? Is there some company to lodge a restoration bond with, or is it with the council? Because that's something I think that we could run into quite a lot of trouble with over the years, given the number of turbines we've got around about that's to be removed when they no longer work. So if you could answer them a couple of questions, please, I'd be much obliged.
Mr. Duncan, you're successfully hiding behind that lectern. Could you? We'll put an infrared light on top of your head, maybe. There you go, Robert.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Level obviously gives a degree of latitude to officers in determining exactly where the control building and compound is to take place, and there's, something got to be put forward by the applicant in that scenario, but obviously we wouldn't be seeking to put that in a conspicuous location. Quite the opposite, we'd be looking at the least conspicuous location given operational needs. Obviously, members of the public have looked at this application, there's information online, members will have looked at that, and you're seeing a control building in a certain location. We can't radically amend something to a degree that would justify a further planning application under a condition, so it can't really be substantially different from what's in front of you. All we're saying is, we're not satisfied really with location layout as proposed at the moment, but deferring that to a later date, so we're not looking at substantial change here in essence. With regard to the other question, the restoration bond, if you look at the recommendation, part of the recommendation is for a Section 75 agreement, and the first point is a restoration bond in order to allow the Council to commission the required restoration works. The restoration bond is therefore part of a legal agreement applying that Section 75 planning obligation with the Council. So it's a legal contract between the developer and the Council in that scenario.
I've got Councillor McCall, Councillor Driver and Councillor Maitland. Councillor McCall first.
Thank you, Chair. I've got concerns on one or two counts with regard to this proposal. First of all, the relatively low separation distance from Black Craig would mean that from certain viewpoints, this development would be seen as contiguous to the Black Craig development, particularly if viewed from the northwest. The second thing, Knockman Hill effectively has an altitude of about 125 metres, because the base level of the land in that area is around 200 metres. So on top of that hill, we are putting an 81 metre, or 5 81 metre turbines. In effect, these turbines would be out of proportion, I would contend, with the size of the hill. And the third thing, the cumulative evidence we have been presented with comes from the environmental report submitted by the applicant. It is not fully up to date, and it certainly does not indicate the aerial extent of the wind farm developments. They are pinpointed as dots that I feel we do require a greater degree of accuracy in the cumulative evidence submitted.
You wish to speak, Robert?
Thank you, Chair. If you're looking for a response, I'd be quite happy to provide one. The suggestion is very obviously, as we've discussed, I think, earlier in 2010, which was some time ago. At that point, obviously, the applicant put forward the cumulative situation as it was then in their submission. However, we have consulted the Council's landscape architect, and her response is based on an up-to-date understanding of which permissions have been granted and which permissions are undetermined at the moment relative to this proposal. In addition, in the actual report, at 4.19, 4.20 and 4.21 particularly, and then with the list below, we're quite satisfied that's an up-to-date list that does give the cumulative picture. Obviously, the other points that have been raised, aren't something that I'm responding on.
Councillor Driver. Thanks. I want to come back to the Section 75 obligation, and it says in the recommendation that the successful conclusion of Section 75 planning relation within 6 months of the date of the committee decision or such reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer. Now, I've seen Section 75s take upwards of 2 years, and that's a concern that I've actually got on this particular thing. The class as a reasonable extended timescale as a committee if we're actually going to be putting that forward. And I think we need to put a timescale in there to make sure that the Section 75 agreement is actually in place before any application goes forward. So maybe within 6 months of the committee or 6 reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer up to 12 months. Now, I would suggest that is a way forward because Section 75 agreement has in the past put us in some precarious positions with other applications that have been in affecting bird sanctuaries and things like that in the area.
Mr. Septic. Absolutely agree. Basically, Section 75s can take an awful long time. Sometimes at no fault of the planning authority, because in certain instances actually it's the applicant to let it go. They get a longer decision period after that. So this is something new that we've actually introduced into committee reports where we're actually asking for a finite period. We thought 6 months should be sufficient time. The reason for adding such reasonable extended time period is really so that if, for example, 6 months was coming up and they were saying, look, it's just going to take us an extra month to get this last little bit sorted, it would seem unreasonable to refuse it under delegated powers. But I'm only talking about a couple of months really. If you want to put an absolute time limit of a year, I'd be absolutely comfortable with that. There's no problem. But this is really to try and make these things not drift on indefinitely.
Is it the same point to Mr. Councillor?
Thanks, Chair. It's really a question more for Paula. I take it in these circumstances that the term reasonable would have legal connotations.
Of course, we haven't seen the titles, we haven't seen the paperwork that's necessary, we haven't seen the securities. If, for example, we had several banks to consent, it is reasonable to allow them time to do so.
Exactly. On that basis, I would not be inclined, as it were, to put any further, subsidiary period of time. I think, I would be happier to see the condition, remain as it is.
Thank you. The issue of access, actually, I've looked at SLH's and actually in parentheses SEPA's objections to the whole issue of widening bypasses across corners, cuttings, etc. And I know that the council's roads officers have not put in an objection, but I just want to be able to say that there doesn't seem to be have been a process which says we will definitely need or not need to make major changes to the public roads. Can I be absolutely clear about this? Because I have to say that, okay, I think these are probably slightly larger roads, but I know that in other areas where suddenly it's become obvious with a welfare application that the public road system would have to be changed, actually people objected very much. They don't want the public road system suddenly, quote-unquote, improved, which is what we were going to be offered. So I just want to be sure that we're not suddenly going to find massive engineering happening somewhere simply because it's going to, quote-unquote, improve the public road system.
Mr. Duncan?
Thanks, Chair. Just happy to clarify. SLH have raised that as a point of concern. They haven't actually objected to the application. but in the report at 2.32, and when you look at off-site impacts, so this is page 42 of the report, page 36 of the papers, they refer to off-site impacts and so on and so forth. Looking at the officer's report, access is considered at 4.42 and 4.43. Essentially, there's a certain amount of work you can do within the public road boundary, which doesn't require planning permission. You would, need a road opening permit to do that. Again, if there's no access at the junction with A702, we need to agree those details as part of the construction method statement. If it is the case that doing a sort of path analysis and finding out that you need to amend the road layout, that may require further information to come in so we can assess that, and it may require a planning application. The other thing is we've also recommended condition 18, which is on, it's just at the foot of page 66 of the report. So we're looking for the results of a test run, and so this has just been pointed out to me. Yeah. The condition contains the phrase, and this is at the foot of the actual page in the committee report, should the report identify a need to remove dry stone dikes, hedgerows or trees, then such should be appropriately replaced in accordance with details into a timetable that should be included with the above report. So we've tried to kind of take the point made by SNH on board, so that you're not getting a heavily engineered road through the countryside.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I just know, and I'm not alone, there's another councillor around here who knows perfectly well that we have had battles with the roads department on putting inappropriate types of, should we say, diking and stone into a rural area. So it's... So I'm just saying, let's keep a watch on it. Let's not just assume that a change is an improvement. It's not.
I think I know what you're referring to. Any other councillor Driver? Thanks. I'm just coming back to what members have said before about some of the concerns that we have, the cumulative impact, the roads, the entry points, all that sort of stuff. I was just wondering if it would be beneficial, as one of the objectives actually said, to develop this for a site visit, to give us a better understanding of what's actually within that area. That itself was obviously one of the objectives asked for a site visit through the noise impact as well. And although noise in itself is perhaps an issue with this particular application, there is the issue of the cumulative impact, which I'm not quite sure where we are with that. I'd like to see it visually, because it is important to do site visits when you're not 100% sure of these things. So I would put forward that actually defer this application for a site visit. Councillor Maitland.
That's a proposal. I propose we do not go on a site visit. I propose we determine it now.
Okay. Councillor McComb.
I will be happy to second Councillor Driver.
Councillor Davis.
And in these particular circumstances, I will second Councillor Maitland.
We have a motion on amendment. Colin?
Okay. So motion proposed by Councillor Driver, seconded by Councillor McComb, to defer the consideration of the application for a site visit. Motion proposed by Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Geddes, to determine this application today.
That would be the
motion amendment.
What was the amendment?
What one's the amendment? The amendment is to determine today. The motion is to defer for a site visit, because we're dealing with this before we deal with Councillor Geddes' motion. Yeah.
So could you just clarify which of the...
Okay, for the purposes of this vote, because we are not dealing with the determination, the motion is to defer the consideration of this application for a site visit. The amendment is to move to determine this today. Is everybody happy?
Yes.
Excellent. Chair.
Amendment.
Councillor Neil.
Chair,
Councillor Blake.
amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough. Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy. Abstain. Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Grant.
Councillor McCaughtrey. Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Ogilvie. Councillor Tate.
Amendment.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ted Thompson.
Motion.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got 6, 9 and 1. Yep, so that would be 6 motions for the amendment, 9 for the, 6 votes for the motion, 9 for the amendment, 1 abstention. The amendment is carried and the committee will determine the application today.
Okay, we have a proposal to approve subject to the conditions, with a couple of amendments to the conditions, I think, which we maybe need clarification on. Councillor Ryber. Last time I asked us coming with regards to it's a recommendation part B with regards to section 75. The issue is that I don't want to see this going on any longer because of section 75 agreements have happened in the past, and I would like to put this to such reasonable extended timescales, not being any later than 12 months, adding to that particular recommendation. Councillor Gale.
As mover of the motion, and I say with the grace of deference to Councillor Barbara, I wouldn't be prepared to amend the motion to incorporate that. No.
Does Councillor Barbara have a seconder? Councillor.
Yes, I'd second that.
Yeah, I think before we start we should clarify the conditions that Councillor Garris has proposed. There's a couple of amendments to that.
The note which I've got is predominantly to do with conditional 27, should read amended to be infrared only. I don't have a note of any others that were agreed. There were clarification issues sought, but were there any other? Yeah, there was the discussion obviously about the compound area and so on, and that was really just alerting, because I think the condition actually does what Councillor Maitland was seeking, provided we ensured that we weren't, as officers, approving palisade fencing.
Happy with that?
So we have a motion proposed by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Dick, to approve the application as per the recommendation, subject to modification of condition 27 to infrared lighting only. The amendment proposed by Councillor Dryborough, seconded by Councillor Stephen Thompson, is also to approve the It's also to approve the recommendation as subject to modification, including the modification to condition 27, but also under modification of the section 75 instructions, so that the reasonable time will not exceed 12 months. Okay. Chair.
Motion.
Councillor Mayo.
Motion.
Councillor Blake. Councillor Dick.
Motion.
Councillor Drabra. Councillor Geddes. Councillor Gilroy, are you abstaining? Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor McCaughtrey. Councillor McCall.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Ogilvie. Councillor Tate.
Motion.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Ted Thompson.
Amendment.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 6. That's 9 votes for the motion, 6 votes for the amendment. With one abstention, the motion is carried and the decision is approved as per the recommendation, subject to modification of condition 27.
Thank you, Paul. Now we're going to item 6 on the agenda, which is the erection of wind turbine 56 metres high to blade tip and substation building with the list of hard standing and access track at land south of Westcote Stockadale was wrote. Mr. Barker. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. You have in front of you a fairly comprehensive report outlining the proposal and the pros and cons of it. As you say, it's for a 56-metre single turbine, essentially sited in the central part on the spur of the North Rings, just to the west of Stranraer, in an area broadly known as Glen Stockadale. This is the details of the site itself, just showing the utilisation of existing tracks and an extension to proposed tracks to reach the actual turbine site. The area generally is fairly well endowed with turbine developments, as you can see from the number of dots and triangles, red dots and green triangles in the shaded circle there. In fact, there's 53 turbines within the shaded area, which is as you can see, a 5 kilometre radius. And that includes the North Wind Farm, of which there are 11 100 metre high turbines. This site is actually 2.2 kilometres away from the nearest turbine of the North Wales Wind Farm. What I'll try to do in this next plan is to explain the nature of existing turbine developments in the area and how this proposal relates to them. The green triangles denote existing turbine commitments, most of which have been erected, and the size of triangle I've tried to use a judgment by expressing the degree of visual impact. So the larger the triangle, the more they are evident and tend to be seen in their immediate and general localities. The same goes with the red dots, which are refusals or withdrawn applications. The application site is denoted by the orange barcode star right in the centre of the picture. And you can see from the contours, and this will be shown out this will be borne out in the slides in a minute, that it actually sits just below the crest of a sort of small drumlin, the landscape being being comprised of lots of drumlins. The blue triangle just to the northwest of the star shows an application site for what was actually a smaller turbine for the farm, for the neighbouring farm called Knockman Hill, which you can see listed there, just labelled there on the plan below the triangle, where the application started life as a single turbine on a similar hillock at a similar elevation, and as you can see from the size of the triangle, it is actually quite a prominent site. It was heading for refusal, and on that basis, the applicants sort of came to us and said, "Look, is there anywhere else I can site it, which would be potentially where objections are likely to be raised?" And we actually agreed on the site just to the southwest of the blue triangle, or to the right of the 99 figure on the map there, the green triangle. As you can see, the actual green triangle itself, even though it's closer to a public road, is actually of a smaller size, indicating lesser impact. But that's sort of blown up in a general area, just shows the density of turbine commitments, which by and large have, in our opinion, used up landscape capacity in that area, both in terms of cumulative and also sequential
frequency electric turbines are experienced in travelling along the roads in that particular area. This is the site actually looking from the south, looking northwards. The hill itself is a drone, and the turbine would protrude just over the hill. That's the same here again, which is an image taken from the environmental assessment produced. As you can see, the turbine is quite visible there, peeking over the skyline. The Knockman Road, which is the main artery going from southwest to northeast through the general area. The hill in the centre is the actual site where the turbine is proposed to be located, and these images taken from the environmental information again show the prominence of the turbine peeking over the ridgeline there. And that's just a close look. Sorry, this next one is actually showing the turbine site or its general area in relation to the. We seem to have transmission interference here. The next one, the site we're looking at now shows the turbine site in relation to the turbine which the applicant already has on his farm. The turbine on the right is a twin-loaded turbine, 43 metres high, which itself is actually using up, we feel, as advised by the landscape architect, quite a lot of the landscape capacity in that area. The proposal would be seen in conjunction with that. So as well as having the two turbines, both quite large in the context of others around there, would also be of different designs, and we feel that those different designs would actually visually jar. One being a three-bladed turbine, the other one being a two-bladed one. This just different aspect on the view there, just sort of showing the general landscape context, but you can just see the application site on the left under the red arrow there. The published images actually didn't show the one turbine in relation to the other, hence the sequence of pictures which I just showed you earlier, but that shows you the prominence of the turbine that's been proposed in this instance. So the twin-loaded turbine is literally just off the right-hand side of the frame there. Again, just a slightly different angle of the same thing. Here, obviously, the twin-loaded turbine is shown, but it's further down the road, further westwards. So it sort of looks as though the turbine proposed is actually sort of less together in the same view, but in reality, as shown by the previous images, we feel it is. Again, just a slight, just an image showing the one turbine being seen in relation with the existing one. And again, the image showing the turbine in the landscape. They're quite prominent, quite relatively large in what is a largely horizontal landscape. Also, distant views are able to be had of the turbine. This is the principal artery which I mentioned going through the site area. Past application site. This is the Knockman Road. Just as you sort of rise up to the plateau from the Stranraer side, you sort of cross the bar, and you would actually see the turbine actually on the skyline. They're quite prominent. And again, that's just sort of using the zoom lens, just showing the hills concerned. So in a nutshell, the reports in front of you, we feel that essentially the turbine is one too many for this area. It's a large one. It's out of context with the general landscape and also the general scale of our turbines around it. It also visually clashes with the turbine that the applicant already has on his farm, which at the time when this original turbine was being
considered, the case put forward at the time was that turbine would fulfil the needs of the farm without any surpluses being sent off to the national grid. So, as far as we're aware, there's been no significant developments at the farm to actually change that. There's quite a large turbine there, which is supplying quite a lot of electricity. And also, from certain reviews, which certain images will bear out, which we didn't actually put on the slideshow, because it's quite dark and doesn't reproduce very well. But you'll see from the SAH quote that they refer to viewpoint 7 and the relationship of the proposal to the North Wales Wind Farm, which in certain reviews it adds to a very discordant view. I have the image here which I can circulate if members wish to see it. But in summary, the proposal is wrong for this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Mr. Bark at this stage? No? Okay. We have no speaker on this. Mr. Archibald. Mr. Archibald, with 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Councillors, thank you for allowing me to speak to you on my planning application. I have lived and farmed in Northern Wales all my life and consider it a privilege to be a custodian of this landscape. I have chosen a site that will have a minimal impact upon the landscape and will allow me to make an annual contribution to the local community of the Swat. The site has been moved to reduce its visual impact. The closed roads in the immediate vicinity are all minor. It is 8 kilometres from the A75 approaching Snow and 10.1 kilometres from the ferry port of Cairnline. Planning permission for the other wind turbines has been granted in the 5 kilometre areas, but none of those have not been erected and will not be built. The landscape architect employed stated that the application was acceptable under environmental impact assessment. Overall, the landscape change was medium to low. All my life, I have been a member of the local community of the Swat. My children and I attended the Swat Primary School. I wish to make a contribution to the village that played such a large part in our childhood. If this application was to be successful, I would make an annual contribution to the Swat Community Association Fund, index linked for 20 years, at twice the rate per kilowatt of larger wind turbines. We have had 28 letters of support from local residents and businesses. The Plan Committee report shows there's one local objection. This is incorrect. His initial concerns were satisfied. The Rents of Galloway is fortunate to have a high wind speed as a natural resource. This application provides you, as councillors, with the opportunity to meet Scotland's renewable energy targets for 2020 and make a contribution to the future of the Swat village for the next 20 years. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any questions for Mr. Archibald? Okay. I think I've got it well. Mr. Archibald, have you been given an indication about a grid connection for this proposal?
Yes, I've got the grid connection about 6 months ago from the Wigtown substation.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, you can take your seat, Mr. Archibald. Thank you very much. Legislation Committee. Councillor Maitland?
I think we should simply agree the recommendation.
Councillor Davis?
I would second that, sir.
Anyone otherwise minded?
No? Okay, Paul?
Committee is determined to refuse the application on the grounds set out in the report.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, which is the installation of wastewater treatment works, including erection of... Oh, sorry, we should wait. Councillor Dick coming back. He declared an interest in that. I was waiting with Councillor Dick, that's what I'm waiting on. Try the front door. Right, we'll continue. Item number 7, installation of wastewater treatment works, including erection of 3 kiosks and associated works, erection of 2.4 metre and 1.2 metre security stock-proof fencing, formation of access and landscaping, renewal of planning permission granted previously under 08/P/4/0134 at north of Wigtown Farm, Calgary, adjacent to Farm A7, 354. Carol McWhinney, please.
Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to highlight that it has come to our attention that condition 2, shown on page 87, has been incorrectly copied from a previous consent. I have copies of the corrected version available, but it should read as follows: that no development in respect to this planning permission shall take place unless a scheme detailing new tree and shrub planting has been submitted to and approved in writing by the Council as planning authority. The scheme shall include all grassed areas, hedges, retained trees and other retained vegetation and details of changes to existing levels. The scheme shall be plotted on an accurate plan of the site to a recognised metric scale and shall detail the number and species of trees and shrubs to be planted, locations, planting density, nursery stock sizes at time of planting and initial maintenance to aid establishment. Okay. This application is for the renewal of planning permission previously granted on the 6th of June 2008. The first slide shows the application site in relation to Calgary, which is shown on to the south. You can also see Bourbon Foot, which is just visible to the northwest under the word plan. It's at the very top of the slide. This is a scaled-down view of the site, and you can see the edge of Wigtown Farm to the south of the site. This is the block plan further submitted with the proposal. The dark green rectangles, which the colours don't show up, but it's the dark blocks that actually appear black. They indicate the 3 kiosks which would be visible above ground level. Each would be approximately 2 metres high, and the largest would have a footprint of approximately 8 metres squared. A 4.2 metre long stretch of 2.2 metre high security fencing would be adjacent to the road that's along the northeast boundary of the site. The block
plan also shows the location of proposed tree planting indicated by the green circles. The southeast and southwest of the site would be bound by existing mature trees, which I'll show on the following slides. The first slide shows the application site taken from the existing field access. This slide shows a view of the site looking directly into the site from the former A7. The trees shown on the left would be on the southeast boundary of the site. The trees shown in the centre of the photo, they would be on the southwest boundary. The final slide shows a view of the existing access from the former A7 looking southeast, and the application site would be on the right hand side. Thank you.
Any questions at this point for Councillor Driver? I'm a bit confused with this one actually, because there's some objections which actually refer to a different application within the Canonby Village Hall, beside the Canonby Village Hall itself. Is that the case, or is this an existing application for both the works here and the work that's actually going to happen in the Village Hall?
This application is for the renewal of a previous planning application at this site, not the works at the Village Hall are a separate application.
It was on the trees. It suggests in the report that this would be seen from Barburn Foot. Is that the case, or what you're telling me now about the tree lines that were missing, that it will not be visible from Barburn Foot?
I think the proposed tree planting would act as a barrier to views from Barburn Foot.
Any other questions for the officer at this stage? No? Okay. We have one speaker for this item, Mr. Bill Frew. Okay, Mr. Frew, I have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Since 2006, my wife and I have set up a bed and breakfast business from scratch, and in 2011 completed the development of 3 cottages on our site at Barburn Foot, 2 of which are self-catering holiday cottages. Most visitors and tourists these days are increasingly web savvy, and will use Google Maps, Street View and TripAdvisor to scout locations before deciding where they'll come. This development will in due course be visible on those maps. With the Council's current local plan and the new development plan identified tourism as a priority for economic development. Our business did not exist in its present form when the original wastewater treatment plant was approved, and the impact on an established and significant local tourism business would, I suggest, should be a material issue now as to whether renewal should be approved. The proposed site will be highly visible to visitors on every journey in and out of Barburn Foot, given that the site is lower than the road level, and screening will be ineffectual, especially in early years. You really only do get one chance to make a first impression. Dumfries and Galloway general policy then specifies a presumption against development that would materially detract from or was incompatible with the character or amenity of an area. The slide you show refers to this point. The picnic site and car park at the bottom of this slide, under the word start, is not shown on the site plan. This picnic area and car park gives access to the lower end of the regional sea area and is heavily used by tourists and locals alike. The impact of a wastewater treatment plant immediately adjacent to that picnic area will be significant. This rural site has no history of development and was not even considered by the previous public consultation. Finally, on behalf of the Chair of the Village Hall Committee, I would confirm their expressions of disgust at the handling of this whole matter, both by Scottish Water and to some degree by the planning process.
A pumping station in the best part of the playing fields, which is an integral part of this proposal, requires the removal of seating and felling of trees donated in memory of people who made an important contribution to the community and now form part of the cultural heritage of this conservation village. Less than 40 metres from this busy popular hall, the inevitable smell during repair and maintenance will be an abiding memory for people of how they were let down by Scottish Water, and up to this point by the planning system. For these reasons, and in an attempt to demonstrate that local people really do matter, we would urge the committee either to refuse or defer this application and require Scottish Water to re-engage with the community at Canonby. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the representative? No? Okay, thank you, sir. You can take your seat. Mayor Session. Councillor Dalry.
I have to agree with some consideration with Mr Minister through the consultation process with Scottish Water, because there were alternative sites actually put forward and the community were involved in that actual consultation and they come forward with alternative areas. However, they were not taken on because of cost implications for Scottish Water, and I think in the report it says something like £365,000 would have had to be found by Scottish Water to actually put it in an alternative location. I can quite remember this one coming forward along with the other one at the Village Hall, and I was actually one who put forward the Annandale and Eskdale Planning Committee to refuse the application. And I'm not going to change my mind on it. I think there is an issue here with regard siting and design, and that's contrary to policy 7, General Policy 7. So therefore, I'm going to suggest that we actually refuse this application on Policy 7, Site and Design.
Thanks, Chair. I'm really going to, unfortunately, have to go over there. I hear what's going on in the community, I understand it, but we've been through this, we've been through the process, and there is no material change as far as concerned within this to the approval. So I'm afraid, unfortunately, I'm going to have to stick with the recommendation here.
Any other members? Councillor Dick.
Could I just ask for clarification on 2.1, but it says there have been no change in circumstances, therefore no requirement to consultees consulted under the original. Has there been any consultation? And just to be absolutely clear, this is the same application that was originally put forward. And why, even if there was no requirement, was there any reconsultation done, or should there have been?
Mrs. Kay.
Thank you. There has been no reconsultation because essentially they're asking to renew the period of time to implement it. So the application was submitted. It's a normal, often can happen that there are delays in an application being implemented. So in order to allow further time for them to go ahead, they come in for effectively a time extension. And this is what they're actually asking for the permission to be renewed. Now, within our procedures, we have clear instructions as to whether or not there's been any change. An example of a change would be if the LDP had been adopted. If the local development plan, in other words, development plans policies had changed, they would form part of the consultation process, and that could have triggered, for example, a consultation with Roads Authority. But there have been no changes since we formed our original view. So in that context, there was no requirement to carry out any further consultations.
Just on the basis of that, what would the implications be if it were to be refused, given there are no material alterations?
That's extremely difficult. My recommendation to you is that the Council has already formed a view, and so you would have to consider why, after a period of time, it could no longer be supported. And professionally, we have advising you that there have been no changes of circumstances in planning terms which would warrant a refusal, which is why we're recommending approval.
Councillor Hislop and then Councillor.
Chair, I'm I've read through the report and I don't see any reason why we should be actually looking to overturn a decision that's already come. And I would support Councillor Mail and second his proposal that we actually agree the recommendations.
Councillor Maitland?
Thank you. I'm afraid I was just not quite quick enough. I want to be completely clear what I'm agreeing. So I wasn't completely quick enough to take on board what was being said in condition number 2. I have to say that I rather agree with Councillor Mayo and Councillor Hislop on this. But I do want to be quite clear about what I'm agreeing, because if you look at what we did agree, and you look at the way that the planting scheme looked like, it looked dreadfully like a row of conifers. And please let that not be the case, because that's not appropriate, especially if this is an area of walking in order to look as natural as possible. So I just want to be quite clear about what I'm agreeing on condition 2. Otherwise, I have to say I'm for the river jelly.
Mr. Sutty? If it's of assistance, just to explain this, basically the wrong standard condition was copied across in this, so Mrs. Kay's handing out the actual wording that we're looking. It's simply, what we're doing is putting in a condition that was attached previously, which is the standard landscaping condition. So simply the wrong one was transferred across, I'm afraid.
What you said here is this condition is on the previous application, but it was just copied and pasted from another application without actually reading it.
The condition that you've got in your hand now is the one that was attached to the previous permission. The back office system has a drop down of a list of standard conditions. Unfortunately, I think the wrong one was selected, that's all. But all we're doing is replicating exactly the permission that was granted in 2008.
Councillor McCormick. Thank you, Chair. On page 91, there is an assurance given that the site is not visible from Candy. Unfortunately, there is no similar assurance given in relation to Barburn Foot.
Well, if Carl can go back a couple of slides, the block plan, which they've submitted, I think shows, there you go. Okay, that's not necessarily the scheme that would be accepted. Condition 2 would cover that, but you can see that the intention there is to have planting on that site to try and screen it to Barburn Foot.
Chair, that's why I asked the question at the beginning. I think it's essential that the screening has to be as best possible from all angles, so that there's very little seen on Barburn Foot certainly would need to be protected by screening. So that's why I asked that question right at the beginning, and I mean I would want to see that enforced probably on the condition.
Just around this one time at the Annandale, before we had the central thing, Annandale and Estill planning, and we had a long debate there at the time, and there was an impetus to get this sorted because there was, to free up for more development, there was extra capacity. 2008 and about 2013, and you know that there's nothing's been addressed. What I'm asking, we're giving furtherance, so it could go on for another 20 years and never get built, or it's definitely going to get built. Is it going to be houses built? I mean, we're putting this. You don't know this, David, because you're the planning officer. We were asked to consider this to put in extra capacity to allow buildings. There was plans for more housing in Canterbury, and the capacity was such. Nothing's been built in what, I mean, what, 5 years? So I just wondered that emergency at that time is gone.
For the record, it's actually Michael Anderson who was the planning manager at the time. Basically, there was an application as well at Canterbury for, was it Forestbury Head it's called, which is Buccleuch Estates development. That took an awful long time to get the Section 75 signed, which goes back to Councillor Driver's point of order. That has now been signed, which is the trigger for Scottish Water to be able to proceed with this. So there is now sufficient demand for them to put in the business case for it. So as I understand it now, there's the threshold to make it happen.
So the nature of the Carnival Village Hall part of this particular application, which I'm sure came around about the same time, maybe a couple of months after, will they then be coming back? Because all of this, and when you say about consultation, which is the issue for the local community in many respects, might not be in some cases a planning issue, but the respect of the village hall area, which is an original scenic area, could be an issue. So is there a minimum coming back in the following year?
The answer that I can't speak for Scottish Water, but if their permission is about to expire and they want to implement it, and that's their call, not the planning authority's call, then they would need to come back in. But if they consider that they have the opportunity to actually implement it before it expires, then they would do that and it wouldn't come back to us. The responsibility would then be with us to monitor to make sure they were implementing it in the approved map plans.
Okay. No other comments? We have a motion. Do we have an amendment? Chair, I put an amendment forward to refusal of the policy D7, which is a site on the line. I don't know a second or so. Okay. Do you have a second or no? Okay, Paul.
Okay, the committee is determined to approve the recommendation as set out in the report, and Councillor Driver's dissent will be recorded.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Do you wish to break at this point, or do you wish to do another one before we break for lunch? What? To do another one? Okay, we'll break and we'll return at 9 o'clock. I'll watch. To housing and water staff support of terrace, erection of plant border and associated car parking and landscaping, and associated demolition of former training centre /school, school building at training centre, Baysway, Dumfries. Claire Eckstein, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just one amendment to the report. There is actually an additional representative, a Catherine Lyle from Yarrogarth and Beeswing, which has not been included on the list, but she has been, her objection has been summarised within the report, and she has been included in any correspondence by the Council regarding the meeting. The proposal is to demolish the existing training centre at Beeswing. This is the existing building which is located centrally within the site and will be demolished. And these are the proposed elevations of the terrace of 5 units of supported housing with a staff support base on the southwestern end. As you can see, it's arranged in a I don't know why that's on there. Arranged in a curved design with car parking on the southern side, and there's a detached plant building in the northeastern corner. And this plan shows more detail of the landscaping and the car parking. So looking at the photographs, this is looking southwestwards towards Dalry. The access road to the actual training centre is in the centre of the photograph, immediately to the left of the bus shelter. And this is looking to the northeast towards Dumfries. The access road to the training centre is just beyond the tall hedge in the centre of the photograph. And this is actually looking down the access road towards the training centre, which is approximately 45 metres from the A711. And again, this is looking about 1 metre step back from that access. We're looking left towards Dumfries, and then right again towards Dalbeattie. As noted in the report in paragraph 2.2, there is a restricted visibility at this junction. And then again looking towards A711 with Mansfield House to the right, and numbers 3 and 4 Henderson Place to the left. And again looking at the training centre and the applications site, and then swinging right. The photographs will now change because these were taken earlier on in the year in May, whereas the previous ones have just been recently taken. And again, this is just a quick sequence showing the site. So the front of the building, this is with the daffodils there, that's the access track up to Yarrow-Garth. And panning right from the previous photograph, this is the boundary hedge with Yarrow-Garth. And again, looking at the corner of the site, showing the end of the training centre, the boundary hedge, Yarrow-Garth on the left. And again, panning right from the previous photograph along the rear boundary. And again, this is looking towards the front of the site, looking towards the rear of the building, looking to side and rear of the building with the tree to be retained, and panning right from the previous photo. And again, front of the building, looking towards the schoolhouse, which is a sandstone building, and the hall, which is to the right, and panning right, that's Henderson Place, and Mansfield House, and panning right again, and then right again. So, a full assessment of the proposal is set out in the committee report, and all the main issues related to the traffic generation and road safety and the existing access onto the A711. In paragraph 2.2 of the report, the Council Road Officer advises that following an assessment of the proposed traffic generation figures compared to the existing traffic generation figures from its current use as a training centre by Auburn, and before that more intensively used by the Dumfries and Galloway Council, it concluded that the proposed trip generation would be less, and therefore had raised no objection. Other issues were also raised relating to the existing tree, which is being retained as part of the scheme and will be protected through planning conditions. The design, number and layout of the scheme was also raised as concerned, as noted in paragraph 1.8 of the report. The proposal is being developed by Auburn for adults with specific requirements, and it's considered that the combination of the additional conditions and proposed layout and landscaping, that the proposal is considered to be acceptable redevelopment of a site within the village, and it's recommended, subject to conditions noted, to approve the application.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions from members at this point for Claire? No? Okay, we have a couple of speakers on this one. Could Sarah Colbeck please take a seat? Ms. Colbeck, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I, Sarah Colbeck, present this statement prepared by Beeswax Community Council to represent concerns of its residents. The points raised are not narrowly based, as we accept and support the principle of providing secure facilities to care for those with special needs. However, we have genuine concerns that the current proposal will not serve the best interests of either the prospective tenants or Beeswax residents. We urge this committee to refuse the present proposal and request that a new development plan is submitted taking full account of issues expressed during the consultation, to deliver a safer, less vehicular intrusive development which is more sympathetic to the neighbourhood. The principal concerns for our consideration are: 1. Infrastructure. Scottish Water have advised that the applicants need to discuss the water and sewage needs, as there is limited capacity to service new demand. This application should not be approved until this is formally agreed. Fewer routes could address these service issues. The size of the development was increased for financial reasons. The provision of the best environment for tenants and less known impact on the users of the private road and the A711 are seemingly disregarded. 2. Road safety and access. Access and egress is acknowledged to be well below normally acceptable standards. The proposed use will see a very different flow of traffic. It will be 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, as compared to intermittent weekday usage. These statistics have not highlighted an issue currently, but it is clear from projections of traffic use and the nature of these risks that risks to pedestrian and driver safety will be increased. Throughout its history, this site has not consistently seen maximum use. Data on which the traffic movement is based are theoretical, inconsistent and questionable, since records are seemingly no longer available to substantiate the claims of utilisation over the years. Local observations suggest that this development represents intensification of use and not a decrease as stated. There is presently no overcapacity for parking in the village. The side road must never be blocked as it could prevent access for both emergency vehicles and residents. There has been no mention of any discussion of the owner of this private access road or mention of appropriate road signage. 3. Tenants. The definition for the disability of tenant should be established and conditions be imposed to ensure that any tenants approved and selected via the statutory plan will be housed here. We request further assurance that tenants are not in a category to present any risk or threat to the local community. Whilst Norwell has said the intention is not to use it for general allocation, this should be mandated against it is built to meet a specific need. It was stated at our committee that it would be used for nothing other than a training centre. Any subsequent new development should be subject to the limits previously proposed by the local residents and the Community Council and its submission for the area development plan. A comprehensive holistic consultation on all aspects of development rather than individual responses. On behalf of the Community Council, I urge you as members of the Planning Committee to accept our comments and objections and refuse the existing proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cormack. Any questions? No? Councillor Maitland.
I was just wondering if the representative was able to help me with respect to the speed limit that Beeswing had. It was changed down to 40, and I think it used to be 60. I'm not absolutely certain. I wonder if I could have some help on that.
Yes, that's right. It was indeed reduced from 50 down to 40. Just trying to remember the date of that, I should know, because we worked on that. What was your reason for, did you know the date on that, Councillor Maitland?
No, I was just trying to remember when that was done, because Beeswing University at that time was active, and then the speed limit went down, and I'm just trying to remember in my own mind at the point that the university, training centre, actually was changed.
I think it says 2008 in the report. Any further questions for the representative? No? Thank you very much. You can take your seat. Okay. I have a Douglas Bodo and a Louise McNichol, please. We have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Louise McNichol. I represent Lorburn Housing Association. The proposal before members today has been developed in partnership with the Council's Social Work Services and Adult Care Services and the Joint Planning Commission and Manager for Adults with Learning Disability. This partnership approach between Lorburn and the Council has recently provided an 8-bedroom supported project in Dumfries, where Social Work Services commissioned care and provide 24/7 on-site support to tenants with assessed needs. It's hoped that the proposal at Beeswing will be the second successful project delivered through this partnership. The training centre became surplus to Lorburn's requirements in 2011, and the property was marketed for sale and lease, but Lorburn did not receive any serious interest. A feasibility study was considered, both refurbishment of the existing building and a new build option for residential use. As a new build option offers an opportunity to provide purpose-built homes for the residents and a more environmentally friendly building, Lorburn's Management Committee and the project team favoured this option. Representatives from Lorburn and the project team have attended 3 community council meetings, and comments raised by the community have been welcomed, and where possible proposals have been amended as a result of the comments from the community. A representation has been made regarding the small size of the units and lack of light. The design of the properties has been carefully considered by the project team, and with specialist input from the Occupational Therapy Service, the properties have been designed specifically to suit the proposed client group. It is the opinion of officers in the project team that the proposals fully meet the requirements of the client group. Although a formal application has not yet been made to Scottish Water for this proposal, informal discussions have been held regarding the impact, and it is not expected that the proposal will increase the volume to the treatment works. Loreburn already successfully manages over 200 supported properties throughout Dumfries and Galloway, where all residents are Loreburn tenants and are completely integrated in the community they live. These properties are provided by Loreburn as well as external support providers. It is the intention that the properties at Beeswing will provide homes for life for the new tenants, and it would not be Loreburn's intention to utilise the properties for general allocations. Future allocation will be considered through the Access to Housing for Vulnerable People panel, which is an existing joint strategic commissioning panel to ensure allocations to supported accommodation are made to the most appropriate clients.
We have 30 seconds.
Current gaps in the provision of this type of accommodation in the area result in local people having to be placed in accommodation out with the region, and a clear demand for this type of specialist accommodation has been identified. It's for reasons outlined today that I ask members to support this proposal.
I'd just like to add that we agree with the contents of the report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. We've spoke for Dalry, go from social services if there's any specific questions to be asked.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Councillor McCall?
Thank you, Chair. We're very aware that there is apparently limited capacity at the wastewater treatment works. Would the partnership be willing to make an appropriate contribution to upgrade the treatment works?
I think that would possibly affect the financial viability of the proposal quite dramatically, although we do anticipate that our proposal will not have any negative impact on the treatment works.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned this would be the second of a similar type development. The one that's in operation just now, is that situated near a busy road such as the A711? We've heard today that there are obviously traffic concerns at this location.
It's situated on the Glencaple Road, close to the Crichton campus, on the lower end of the Crichton campus, just approaching the roundabout at the school up there.
Councillor Jarvis. Thanks, Mr. In relation to the Community Council, and you changed your application with the issue that were raised in the Community Council. Can you give us an idea of what those actually were?
We had originally intended to remove the mature tree that was on the site to just allow slightly better situation of the building. Although that was, it was agreed that that would be retained following consultation. We've also agreed that we'll use more sympathetic lighting to reduce any impact of excess light from the centre, from the site, and also we've had discussions about the requirements for fencing.
Councillor McKay.
Thanks, Chair. There seems to be an issue about traffic movements. How many do you see staff being in there permanently, and how many staff movements would you see in a day coming in and out?
Staffing levels will be determined by the people who are living in the houses, obviously, but our calculation has been around having a staff base on site actually means that our intention is to have a single provider primarily provide the care on site, and that means that reduces the movement. It's not like having 5 separate providers going into 5 separate houses, and so our traffic movement should be lesser on that basis. I think the on-site staff base means that the movement would be well controlled, but actually the number of movements we've worked out some of the, if you had at the highest end of care where somebody needed 2-to-1 care and 24 hours a day, a number of changes over,
sort of estimate around the 40 at the top end within the report is probably reasonable in terms of the highest end of care, but my anticipation is that the movement will be, in terms of staffing, will be lesser. There will be some visitors to the houses, there'll be some activities that people attend themselves, but with the actual movement in terms of staff, it's not a huge staff group coming and going from the scheme.
Councillor Dick. Thanks, Chair. 4.16 on drainage, it says that there's a condition recommended that no development commences until agreements reached between the developer and Scottish Water in terms of the connection made with public sewer. Could you advise us if there's been any discussion between Lord Burn and Scottish Water at this stage, and whether they're suggesting that it's possible to accommodate this at this point?
There have been informal discussions with the engineer and Scottish Water officers, and I've been advised by the project engineer that they don't anticipate any problems in meeting that condition.
Any other questions? Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned, you spoke about the expected vehicle movements coming from this location. I see from page 96, the normal car parking arrangements for special needs housing is one space for 3 dwellings, but in this particular case it's going to 2 spaces for each dwelling, which may indicate a possible intention of a change of use further down the road. Could you comment on that, please?
I think that the proposal's been progressed in line with the requirements for parking for dwellings, not for supported use, or I'm not sure what the terminology in the report is. However, we are happy to accept the condition that's been proposed in terms of the future use of the site. And as I say, we would not intend to use it as a general allocation. Any future allocations will be done through the Access to Housing for Vulnerable People panel and made appropriately for supported accommodation.
Okay. Any further questions? No? You can take your seats again. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, with the session, Councillor Galloway.
Thanks, Chairman. As far as I'm concerned, so this is a more than commendable project which is being supported and will be run by arguably one of the best housing associations and you know, this part of the world. And my view, short compass, we should grant the application as submitted. I think the quicker that this facility can be provided, the better. And that's not meant to be riding roughshod over the views that have been expressed on behalf of the local community. But I personally feel that this is an application that cannot be commended highly enough.
Councillor Dalry. Thanks, Chair. I have seen some supported accommodation from other housing associations as well, which I've listened to by people who do need help actually living in a home and disasters house, not taking any disrepute of the community council and what their concerns are. It appears that the applicant has been at least 3 times to the community council and actually tried to respond to their concerns. I do hear that the issue about Scottish Water, but I'm quite sure that Scottish Water and the applicant will come to some arrangements which will help the situation. I'm quite happy to set some of that. Councillor Maitland.
I hope very much we're not going to come to any sort of vote. I concur with the opinions of people around the table. I would also say that there is an argument to say that if we do have the opportunity of citizens with less ability to live in villages here, it's possible that that might assist Breezewing in reducing yet further that traffic speed. You never know.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you. I have some concerns about the road safety situation in this location. It's a very restricted view coming out there, and undoubtedly I think this would be an increase in traffic movement, especially at different times of the day and night. In addition to that, the answer to my last question
was about the possible change of use in the future. It does, if you look at paragraph 420, it said it could be viewed as unreasonable to impose a planning condition restricting the type of resident. Now, maybe David could explain that one. If we could, in fact, limit it to special needs housing and prevent it being opened up to the general market.
Yes, I think the board's chosen quite carefully in paragraph 420. It's the type of resident I don't think you could restrict, but if you actually look at condition 1, then we had quite a lot of discussion about how best to word this. What this is really saying is this can only be used for supported housing. In planning terms, a house is a house, so whether it's supported housing, there's various other sorts of housing that could fall within it. It all falls within class 9 of the use classes order, which give us some difficulty, but the wording we've come up with is basically saying it's got to be retained as the same planning unit. You can't sell it off, lease it, or otherwise dispose of it. And it can't be used for, notwithstanding the fact that in class 9 a house is a house, it's basically saying it's got to be used for supported housing. So conditionally it's quite clearly limited, and legally I accept that, but that's the nub of what it's saying, is it's got to be used for what they've applied for as supported housing. And we've heard from the applicant they're willing to accept that condition.
Okay, Councillor Key.
Thanks, Chair. I think this type of housing, there was an issue up in Including at one time when they were building something similar, although much bigger. There's a perception sometimes of the people who may be in there, and I think the locals will be assured once it's in use that there is no need for concern. This type of housing, as has already been said, is to be welcomed. The only issue I would ask planners, there's a talk about roads maintenance. Being as a private access road, there doesn't seem to be any owner. Do you look to put any condition on that regarding maintenance of the road, even up to the level of where the new houses are being built?
We have been advised that there is actually an owner, and that's the owner of West Park. You know, remember the Falcon business that's there? He owns the road, and he has been advised that it would be, if there was issues regarding maintenance, etc., then it would be a civil matter between himself and obviously the developer in this case, which is Lauren.
Okay. One more quick, sorry, Councillor Galloway.
Yes, thank you. One of my questions has been answered, which was about the type of occupancy, and if that is covered in recommendation 1, that is fine by me. What I would just like to ask the planners is so that this has gone from a 2-unit, 2 houses, to 6, basically, you know, and that's what it was allocated as in the plan, which I'm led to believe from the objections from the representatives. And if that is the case, one of the concerns was that the units are too small, and you know, you do not want people to be living in what I would call boxes. There's got to be a level of space and environment that is suitable for them, and I just wonder if you're quite happy with the design that has come forward for these units.
In terms of the allocation within the local plan for 2 units, it's never been allocated, the site's never been allocated for housing. So that number of 2 units is nothing that we've ever put forward, because it's never had an allocation for housing for that number. In terms of the design, obviously that's come forward, and obviously you've heard from the agent that it's been developed to meet the special needs client group that they're aiming for, and we're happy with the design of the actual building.
Okay, any further comments to make, any further points? Okay, we're happy to approve go over regulations, Paul.
Committee is determined to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the report.
We now move on to item 9 on the agenda.
which is variation of condition 1 of planning permission 10/P/4/4/0032 relating to time period for submission of a further planning application or for further works to commence on site, whichever is later, at Milnmark Farm, Ecclefechan. As some of you will be aware, and certain local members are aware, there has been quite a bit of controversy about this. High level of inquiries, and I have been of the opinion that it's purely and simply an application to extend an existing planning approval in principle for a further 3 years, and that if there is a seller or a purchaser for the site, that a detailed planning application would come forward at that point, at which point all community consultation, etc. would be taking place. Mr. City, is that a correct assumption?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you're absolutely correct in that comment. Perhaps to give a little bit more detail, the planning permission that was granted before was a planning permission in principle. So you can't actually develop from a planning permission in principle. It does what it says in the name. Basically, it's to establish the principle of development. You always need a further set of applications to come in, one application or a number. And that's really what condition 1 of the previous permission was saying, that there was a time period of 3 years in which the further applications, the jargon referred to as all of the matters specified in the conditions below, had to have been submitted within that time period. And then works had to commence in the second part of that, in compliance with that. Now, if you see on the front page of the report here, it does say application type for planning permission. Now, that I think has probably caused some confusion amongst members of the public. The application is to vary the actual time limit. The original planning permission in principle was granted. So, under Section 42 of the Act, it has to be a full planning application to vary the terms of the condition, but it is not the full planning application for the entire development. So, as the Chair just said, a further application for that will have to come in. This is an application which, by definition, must be a full planning application just to vary the terms of the duration of the permission that was previously granted. So hopefully that's clear. I can understand the confusion, but this is not the application for the development that will enable it to actually go in on the ground completely. There will have to be further applications that are purely limited to the time.
So the application type from whatever it was before, in principle, to a full planning application is a technicality.
Yes, and basically what this is doing is extending the period of a previous planning permission in principle. By the technical side of it, it must be in itself under Section 42 a full planning permission, but that's all it's actually doing, is it's extending the period of time for the planning permission in principle that has previously been granted.
There's a kind of clarity on which you obviously have a piece of string. How long can this actually go on for? Because another application in 3 years' time, nobody actually coming forward with a full application could cause even more concern to local residents within that particular area. I know there's not been any neighbour notification because as it applies in the planning policies today, there is no neighbour notification required for the planning in principle and the plan for this particular thing here.
Maybe Janice can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the application would have been subject to neighbour notification, but there's probably a limited amount of people within the 20-metre consultation.
I think perhaps there's a little bit of confusion there. The turbine application, which is not the subject of the application, didn't require neighbour notification, but this one did.
Okay.
Chair, could I have just a little bit of clarification with regard to the fact that this was granted on the 18th of June 2010 and the condition clearly states that it would fall or expire within 3 years of that date unless a further applications for all of the matters specified in conditions below have been submitted. Have we received an application for all of the matters specified in the thing below, or has this actually fallen because it hasn't been met the terms of the condition?
Well, we haven't received any applications specified by the conditions, and therefore what this application is doing is it was submitted prior to the expiry of the previous planning permission principle. And when somebody does that, they submit an application, then that actually extends the period automatically until a determination is made on it. So, for example, if this one was approved today, that's fine, there's no break in the validity of the permission. But it is a high risk strategy for the applicants to do that, because obviously if it's refused, yes, they've a right of appeal, but that means that the entire permission is gone. They're effectively back at square one, and they would need to submit a whole new application again from scratch.
Okay. Lizzie Brown, please.
Thank you. First of all, I'll take you through the slides in relation to the application. From this first slide, you can see that the application site lies adjacent to the M74 in B7076. And it's approximately 5.4 kilometres to the southeast of Lockerbie and about 430 metres to the northwest of Ecclefechan. This site plan shows the application site again, which comprises an area of agricultural land extending to approximately 97.6 hectares. The site would be accessed from the B7076 via Grains Overbridge to the north and Johnson Bank underpass to the south. This first photograph has been taken from the B7076 and shows the underpass leading to Johnson Bank Farm on the southern end of the application site. Travelling through the underpass, this photo has been taken from a point close to the dwelling house known as Braemar, looking in an easterly direction over the southern end of the application site. Moving along the farm access to Johnson Bank Farm steading itself, this photograph looks in a southeasterly direction, and then remaining in the same position and panning round 90 degrees, this photograph looks northeasterly. Travelling towards the north end of the application site, this photograph has been taken from the Grains Overbridge over the M74, looking east towards the application site. Moving along the Newfield Farm access and the northern boundary of the application site, this photo has been taken just before the 90-degree bend in the farm access road and looks south across the northern half of the application site. And this final photograph has been taken from the bend in the access road and looks east across the northern part of the site. As set out in the report, there's been no change in local or national policy and no material change in circumstances since the original grant of planning permission in June 2010. The proposed variation of condition is therefore considered to be in accordance with the development plan and is therefore recommended for approval.
Any questions for the officer? Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, could I ask Lindsay to go back to the site plan that had the red and blue lines? I think it was one of the first slides you put up, Lindsay. Question is, what's the significance of the blue box and the big red one? I mean, we see Johnston, in our papers, Johnston Bank Farm's right in the middle of that. I take it the whole thing's not right in the middle. I know it's only planning permission in principle, but I just want to understand in my head what the difference is. And equally, within the site, we've got Braemar. You mentioned Braemar. It's within the application site. Is that right? So that's the one question. The other question is, what's the difference between the red and blue boxes?
The red line delineates the application site itself, and the blue line shows land that is also within the control of the applicant but doesn't form part of the application site. Braemar and the buildings at Johnson Bank Farm have been shown to be retained and will potentially be used for accommodation as part of detailed proposals, which will come forward at a later date.
Councillor, any further questions for Lindsay? No? Okay, we have three speakers, in fact we've got 5 of them. Mr. Brian Capstick, please, first. Mr. Capstick, this is a major application, so you have 5 minutes, and I'll give you a warning 30 seconds before the end.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'm speaking to you as Mr. Capstick of Mayfield House, which is the house in the middle surrounded by the coloured squares. I'm a site engineer with considerable experience in medium to large construction projects and construction sites, and I will touch on points raised in my letter dated the 26th of June. The original application was based on a small-scale data file which showed numerous small buildings which to some extent blended into the surroundings. The actual proposals now in circulation show 4 huge buildings, each as big as 1.5 acres, sort of a football pitch size, and over 50 foot tall. This, coupled with 2.3 miles of 10-foot high fencing, the whole site lit and covered by CCTV camera 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. As you drive into this wonderful countryside on the M74, you pass a large sign stating a natural place. If you recommend this application, you may as well take it down now, because 10 miles further up the road will be a huge industrial site staring at you from the hillside. Planning policy states that brownfield sites are to be considered for regeneration as a priority. Can the applicant demonstrate this for either then or now? I very much doubt it. Many others have stated that it seems that consideration for the wildlife and natural habitat is very low on the list. Although I regard Scottish natural heritage as a vital part of applications such as this, the report dated the 31st of July 13 of this year states that no badger set is within 30 metres of the proposed works. A very large established, at least 10 years, probably more, active set is situated in the tree line on the proposed plant boundary near the proposed transformer buildings or other buildings that could be there. Indeed, my 3-year-old son and I watched a baby badger looking for food in a hedgerow in the main part of the development field, shown in the photographs. Inaccuracies such as these make you wonder what other creatures have been missed, or such a rushed report. Read my letter regarding TB issues. Regarding the original road from Ecclefechan to Lockerbie, having got a variety of maps dating back to 1864, I can prove its existence, and I'm led to believe that this continues to be a public right-of-way passing directly through the development. Is this to be severed? Are the 250-year-old trees allowing it to be cut down? Why? Lady West's historical significance should also be noted, at which one town was fenced and had a stand of trees accompanying it. It is believed that the small house was here in the early 18th century, where large Lutheran meetings were held in the front Newfield field by permission of the owner, converts being baptised in radio, and also have a map which shows the added presence of a washing pool. This type of heritage should be considered during planning proposals, and again this has not happened for whatever reason. Transport, my letter also notes the vehicle movements at every 38 seconds as an average. This will of course be much greater at peak times. How will my wife walk down the lane with our young baby, or our children ride their bikes without fear of serious harm? What would you feel like if someone was hurt or worse killed by a construction wagon on this very narrow lane, which has no passing places? I also highlight the power requirement needed, which is approximately 10,000 homes worth. New infrastructure, etc. is needed on a large scale, not highlighted in this request. Once built, the microclimates will be huge. As the reading in the Scotia Global Information of their own, 33% of the energy saved is using fresh air, i.e. 5,000 homes worth of electric heating going into the atmosphere constantly in 30 seconds. Visually, 4,000 metre squares is huge. A football pitch is only 220 by 80 metres. So 4 football pitches joined by covered corridors. This is, quote, expandable to 16,000 square metres, i.e. 16 football pitches. Have the good members of this committee read the small print? 15 local jobs, these could be caravan area, against massive irreversible and expanse in our beautiful countryside. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capstick. Any questions, Mr. Capstick? Members? Councillor Hobovic.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Mr. Capstick, he mentioned in his submission there that he's seen detailed plans, and I saw a Dalry school up. So I don't know what's up there, because members haven't certainly seen them. It was clearly stated at the start of this is purely a continuation of planning and principle, so there shouldn't be any detailed plans floating about. So I just wanted to clear that one, Mr. Capstick.
There were detailed plans put forward about 2 years ago by the Lords, and that's the latest type of plans and scenarios that have been put forward, have been developed, etc. As I said, the original plans showed small, like, hill-house size things floating about. It looked quite okay, but when we saw the latest proposal, that's what was proposed. And so, this type of proposal, with these large buildings, is possible if this is recommended. It is not just a small-scale farm, as they would call it, data farm. It's a huge industrial complex. If you read Scotia Global's own information that they have on their website, it is massive. They're promoting a huge system here. We're talking thousands upon thousands of square metres of buildings lit up all the time. 200 acres lit up. They have to do that for security. You can't say, we won't do that. That's needed regardless.
Mr. Sutty?
Just for clarification, there is no application in for what used to be called reserved matters. Any scheme which Lloyds put forward a few years ago is not being considered. There's no application. Lloyds have pulled out of any interest in it. And the application that's before you today is purely looking at the extension of the period of the previous planning permission principle.
Any further questions for Mr. Capstick? No? Okay, sir, you can take your seat. Thank you. Mrs. Anne Capstick, please. Okay, you have another 5 minutes, sir. But,
I have objected to this application as I am appalled someone has decided to ask for permission to build on an area that I own without having the decency to contact me. Should this go ahead, how will I have access to it? Or am I expected just to hand it over without question? Give it up. Will my land be taken from me and any part of this ridiculous also? If this is the plan, then I know my rights. I have asked these questions several times and I am still waiting and someone giving me an answer. It is stated in council information that 21 days notice must be served to every person who has ownership of the application in question. Otherwise the application will be deemed invalid. And as what of the understanding, notice can be served after the registration of the application. I only received notice on the 4th of July after asking some questions. If this application goes ahead, it will be criminal for countless reasons. The amount of wildlife will diminish dramatically. What about the bats? What about the red squirrels? What about the beautiful road that ran free? And was of the understanding those animals had some rights to be protected. Or are they, like the people objecting this application, not taken to consideration when it's something like Johnson Doubt wants it? That's all, sir.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Capstick on behalf of Mrs. Capstick? Councillor Dick.
Just in relation to building on land, so I understand you can apply for a planning application on land you don't own, but could you be more specific about that? What part does Mrs. Capstick own that is within this proposed development, and presumably that was there when the first permission was given? I'd just like some clarification on that.
It was originally owned by Scottish Water, and I didn't know about it either at the time. If you look on the screens at the upper two square fields, the red ones, you'll see a little square area of the river to the right, or red one. That's it. But I'm not talking about the large job, but it would have been all directly over the buildings. And possibly in future buildings. It is accessed from a property line, which is to the left. It goes sort of southwest-ish to get to it. Would you like me to read out the clause for? I'll just try and find it for you. Yeah, Councillor Dickwood would like you to read that out. Pardon? Councillor Dick would like you to read that, yeah. Okay. This is the land ownership certificate as signed by Sir Hudson. I certify that no person other than myself, the applicant, was an owner on any part of the land to which the application relates at the beginning of the period 21 days ending with the date of the accompanying application. I have, the applicant, served notice on every person other than myself, the applicant, who at the beginning of the period of 21 days ending with the date of the accompanying application was owner of any part of the land to which the application relates. Thank you. Mr. Sotty. The Councillor Dickwood is quite correct. Anybody can apply for planning permission on any land. You don't need to be an owner. You do need to actually notify the owner of the land. Now, this very query cropped up just yesterday with a number of staff. We have to take on trust what is found in our file. It's a legally binding document. Basically, in the instance that we actually get any queries, then we'll immediately go back to the agent and get that sorted out. And I think Liz is going to clarify that that's what happened in this case.
Yes, on receiving the representation from Mrs. Capstick, I did go back to the agent and they served the appropriate notice and therefore have fulfilled the requirements of the legislation.
Thank you. Any further questions for the representative? No? Okay, you can take your seat, sir. Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Barbara O'Hara, please. It's incorrect. We have to ask the agent to do it. Mrs. O'Hara, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Owen and I've lived at Craiglands, Ecclefechan for 25 years. Craiglands is approximately 1,200 metres along the valley to the north-east of Johnson Bank. If you look at the picture, you can see us on the, you see the round bit on there's a track, a racehorse training track, we're next door to it. I'm against the proposals for a number of reasons, many of which I share with other objectors, so I choose to speak on just 3. The local development plan. I was concerned when Johnson Bank was not identified as land suitable for industrial development in the current LDP, which applied at the time of the original application in 2010. I am more concerned and perplexed by the fact that in the new currently consulted on LDP, it is still not identified as suitable for industrial development, even though there is an existing planning permission in principle for a major industrial development attached to that land. Why bother with an LDP if it's going to be ignored when planning decisions are made, and major planning decisions? I object to the fact that planning permission in principle has been granted for a site that is not considered suitable for industrial use in the LDP. Secondly, environmental impact assessment. The original screening decision for this application was made in 2008. It was judged that an EIA was not necessary for such a major development involving 241 acres of land. Many of us find this decision incomprehensible and ill-judged and feel EIA was essential. The Environmental Impact Assessment Scotland Regulations 1999 deals with multiple applications. It states that for the purposes of determining whether EIA is required, a particular planning application should not be considered in isolation if, in reality, it is properly to be regarded as an integral part of an inevitably substantial development. You may be aware that recently an application has been made for 3 wind turbines, each 114 feet 10 inches tall at Johnson Bank. I think you need to consider whether the aims of the regulations are being frustrated by the submission of piecemeal applications, as the planners have judged it to be unnecessary to take the 2 applications together and require EIA to be carried out. Legal opinion and case law states that the combined impact of the 2 applications should be judged together when assessing the need for EIA, as the regulations require. I would like the decision on the need for EIA to be revisited in light of the number of objections received to these proposals. Number 3, increasing flood risk to Ecclefechan. There are well-founded fears that the creation of a lot of hard standing at Johnson Bank, land which currently acts as floodplain for slowing down the speed of runoff to Ecclefechan Burn, will add to the flood risk in the village. A report produced for SEPA in 2011 entitled Potentially Vulnerable Areas lists Ecclefechan as the 7th most vulnerable town or village in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, having 65 properties identified as being at risk of flooding. And that's before you add in the increased incidence of heavy and frequent rainfall due to global warming. If this application is passed and flood risk is increased, who will be responsible? I think councillors need to judge for themselves, 1, whether this is appropriate use of agricultural land in an area totally given over to rural activities. 2, did the LDP get it right when it failed to identify the site as suitable for industrial development in both the last and the next LDP? 3, whether the proposed access is suitable for industrial purposes and what would be the impact on the residents whose only access is via the same track? 4, can the proposed development fail to have a damaging impact on the wide variety of wildlife on the site? 5, is there any guarantee that the flood risk to Ecclefechan will not be increased? I would strongly advise that a site visit to Johnson Bank is essential before deciding this application. And finally, I would appeal to the committee to consider the stress and worry for concerned residents, which will be prolonged for another 3 years should this application be granted, and also to defer any decision until the combined impact of the 2 proposals can be assessed together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen. Any questions for Mrs. Allen at this stage? Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask Mrs. Allen to restate the height of the turbines which were mentioned?
114 feet 10 inches to blade tip.
Is it feet or is it metres?
That's feet. 114 feet 10 inches.
Okay. Any further questions? No. You can take your seat, Mrs. Allen. Thank you. Mr. Douglas, please. No, could you put on the microphone, please, sir, because it's not recorded. We'll be able to hear you. It's to be recorded, sir. Sorry? You need to have the microphone on so we can record it. Thank you. Oh, what a relief to stand up. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you for reminding the councillors that the application form was a legal document. As I understand it, legal documents have to be filled in correctly, put it mildly. If I submitted an objection to a planning application a day late, would you expect it to be accepted? No. For example, a letter from Mary McLean Spence with a legally argued case, including examples of case law to justify the need for EIA at Johnson Bank, was rejected in 2010 for allowing on the deadline allowed. Can you believe it? Contrast this with an ill-crafted application to extend this planning permission only finally meeting the criteria demanded over a fortnight after the expiry of the planning permission in principle. The application still has blatant inaccuracies. Here are just two examples, and there are more. Firstly, question. Are you proposing any changes to public paths, public rights of way, or affecting any public rights of access? No. No? It would seem that erecting a double security fence around a 97.6 hectare gated site would not stop the public's right to roam. Secondly, question. Is the site in an area of known risk of flooding? Answer, no. CEPA's lists of potentially vulnerable areas as Ecclefechan and Sederunt at risk in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway. Are there two sets of rules? It would appear so. On the subject of ill-crafted submissions being accepted, and these are being accepted actually as gospel, I would like to turn to the ecological survey by DH Limited. It contains a list of reasons why they could not conduct individual surveys. For example, along the trees precluded a bat survey. Basil in the woods. And excess vegetation and steep-sided watercourse is a reason for not surveying waterfalls. You put your bodies on, you get down there and you do it. There was no mention of barrels, although we did manage to spot starlings, house sparrows and crows. We're told that a site of 97.6 hectares is unsuitable for ground nesting birds, even though I've personally seen snipe, curlews, skylarks, pipits. I could go on. It seems that on the site, seems to me that there's been a determination not to look for protected species so as not to inconvenience the applicant. When Lawrence TSB showed an interest in Johnson Bank at an open evening held at the Hotel in Ecclefechan on the 28th of January 2011, a Lawrence TSB agent, Mr. Matt Bacon of ARC-MC, was proud of the fact that there were bat roofs in all mature trees, barrels in the buildings, water holes in Ecclefechan and St. Clair Burns. This was at odds with the latest survey, so we can only conclude that emissions were by design or the surveyor was incompetent. When I was born, this would have prompted jokes about banjos and cows' backsides, but it's not funny. This is deadly serious. There's also been a recent application for 3 wind turbines on the same site, so the decision not to require EIA on the combined impact of the two applications could set a dangerous precedent which could affect each and every one of your councils in your own constituencies. A decision about an industrial development that could contain 90 maximum size football pitches, do your maths. 90 by 120 metres is a maximum size football pitch. What Scotland plays on. Surely wants an EIA and a site visit, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Any questions for Mr. Howard? No? Okay. We have Sir Hudson, please.
No questions?
No questions.
Another 10 minutes.
No. You're never finished.
To work that way.
Ms. Hudson, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Members have already heard that this application is not a renewal of an application, but it is actually an extension of the time limit to a non-time expired permission. So all we're asking is for a further 3 years in order to allow the 24 conditions attached to the original planning permission in principle to be addressed. I would draw members' attention to paragraph 4.4 of your report, which states that the
principle of the development has already been established through the grant of planning permission in principle under 10p 4032 in June 2010 and is therefore not for consideration. There have been no changes in policy, there have been no changes in circumstance. There has been an ecology survey, as you've heard and are aware of, updating the previous findings, which has been acceptable to SNH. If approved, the permission will be subject to the same conditions as the previous planning approval, which included one condition addressing community council concerns, which was condition 8, requiring a habitat management plan. The conditions also require the species, the protected species to be surveyed further and to be protected in all circumstances. Just to clarify, there have been several issues of concern raised. All of those were considered at the as part of the original planning permission in principle. Members were then satisfied that they had either been addressed or could be addressed by the conditions, the 24 conditions attached to that consent. Lighting was also something that was conditioned and controlled. The details of buildings is controlled by a further consent. The mention of turbines previously is very misleading. It's not part of our planning application, it never has been. That's all I wish to say, thank you, Chair. But I would like members to feel free to ask questions. I'll answer what I can.
Thank you, Ms Hudson. Any questions? Councillor Hislop.
I was wondering if you could give me the date when the rectifying of the ownership issue actually took part.
When I actually served notice. I don't actually have that information, but maybe Janice has.
Not to hand now.
We've got it, yes. Oh, we looked at the legal documents.
It was as soon as I became aware of the fact that it hadn't been served correctly, I corrected that and sent out a notification of land ownership, and Lindsay was, thank you, got my glasses on, 28th of May, served on the 28th of May, and the correct amount of time has expired for that, for the landowner to make representations.
Okay. Any further questions, Ms Hudson? Councillor Black? Obviously, I have the representatives about the environmental impact assessment, specifically on the application site being quite a large site, and you've said that you've had correspondence with SNH. I was wondering if there were meetings with SNH actually on that application site?
Not under this particular planning application, because this is just for extension of time. There were certain meetings when the original planning application was submitted.
Just on that, is there any evidence from the most recent survey that there was any difference in the extended wildlife on that site from the one that was done on the original application?
Not significantly, and in fact all the species, the bears, the badgers, the owls, all bats, they are protected by condition or previous planning consent, which would be transferred to this one. Would have to be investigated and surveyed further.
Okay, any further questions? No? Thank you. Sorry? No, I think that's everybody. Thank you, Ms Hudson. You can take your seat. Organisation. Councillor Maitland.
Could I just ask the officers, I'm not entirely clear, if we're supposed to be looking at this with respect to any changes to do with policy or conditions or circumstances, which might mean that we might take a different view on the original planning consent, I would have expected to have seen the conditions on the original planning consent, so we could have had a look at that.
The conditions are actually refer Councillor Maitland to pages 108 to page 111. All the previous conditions are there.
Councillor Blake. Thank you. As a previous planning permission for this site, can David possibly explain why this does not feature in the past LDP and in fact the proposed one?
No. Honest answer. I don't know why they haven't put that in. I don't know if you got any views on it?
I can't comment on the forthcoming one, but I can refer back to the policies which are in the current development plan, where the policies, if you just give me 1 moment, I was looking them out. Specifically in the structural plan policy, policy D9 I think would be the one, just talking to, it says large-scale industrial development on land not allocated for such use will be considered favourably subject to the council being satisfied in relation to, and there's a series of issues which have to be addressed, which is what went through with the previous application. So in other words, the reason for selecting this site in preference to others, because you've got to recognise that some development, the development plan can't predict is coming. So, for example, when the structure plan policy was being written in 1999, data farms would not have been known, but every proposal that the council receives, you can't therefore write a policy to address every circumstance. So it was recognised that the council might get such an application, not knowing whether it was a data farm or otherwise, and wrote the policy saying that in these circumstances we would support such of this development provided these criteria are met. And basically it says the first one is the reason for selecting the site. The second one is impact on the landscape and the environment can be minimised. Discharges to air and water, the traffic impact, the safety, security and noise implications, and the availability of service infrastructure during construction and operation. So that would have been assessed as part of the application where it was previously considered. As to why, I would suggest that you would need to speak to the LDP, but perhaps it is because of the same reason that it is very much a bespoke, and if somebody can make a justification for having a particular type of development and they can mitigate against it, then the reasons for it, it has to be into consideration. What do you think, David, is that?
As to why it's actually not specifically included in the LDP, I honestly don't know. I think Janice is correct. The fact that we have one also at Lockerbie that was proposed at Peel Houses, it may well be that it was decided to actually not specifically identify it because of the fact that there were the previous permissions which were looked at on separate policies, rather than giving a specific identification. At the time the plan was pulled up, we were aware that loads were going out of their interest. It may well be something to do with that, but honest answer, I really don't know. I'm quite intrigued to find out myself.
Or it could just be an admission.
Councillor Darby. Thanks very much, sir. What I did is, looking back at this application, we actually go back to the 16th of June 2010 when this application came from Arundel and Estill Area Committee. Janice is absolutely right, it came under the structure policy D9, particularly it was sections 1, 2, 4 and 5, because that was the areas that I said it was contrary to policy D9. At that particular time I was seconded by our good friend and unfortunately I had to be Tom Brown, and sad as that may be, I'm sure he'd be glad that I'm bringing this up again. Over the thing I might be thinking about, it's a sad precedent on the 2 deaths that have occurred over the last couple of weeks, and this is actually causing a bit more disharmony, if you like, within Echo-Facant. The missing part of all this, I think, is the environmental impact section. Although this actual part-time application is about the extension of condition 1, but it's planning in principle at the end of the day. The problem with principle, as the leader said earlier on, was there were certain subjects that we, in any condition, to try and get as much information as possible for any application to come forward. For a full application, that hasn't happened. I'm sure people will remember that in the large TSB with regards to the data farm as well. My concern is quite clear on this is, I don't think it'll ever happen. That's my concern. That whole issue about funding and the size of applications that might come forward, I've got nothing to do with it, but my concern is that this is not going to come forward. So, looking at what we've done in the past and looking at the potential future, I want to make a suggestion that we actually refuse this application on the same grounds as I did in 2010, which was on structure policy D9, in particular sections 1, 2, 4 and 5, and it is contrary to that policy.
Okay, Councillor Maitland.
Well, I can't comment on that because I haven't got the policy in front of me. Look, I'm really sorry, and I've got to go back and ask again the sort of daft-lazy question. I'm really sorry, I don't understand why in the recommendation that the conditions don't appear underneath that. You're going to have to explain to me because I don't understand why. And I asked my colleague who I understood too, and he said no, he didn't like the second.
Because it's not a renewal, what they're doing is they're applying under section 42 of the Act to vary one condition. And what they're doing, if you look at the description, it's variation of condition 1. So it's by varying that condition alone to give them another 3 years. It's varying permission 10p 40032. So all the previous conditions automatically still apply. The only thing that's being varied is the time period. So it's not a renewal of a previous planning permission where all the previous conditions go on. The one which we had at Canada earlier, the Scottish Water one, that was a renewal. So you saw the entire conditions going through. Item 10 is exactly the same. So you'll see that there's just the time condition. It automatically follows all the previous conditions come through. It's a specific mechanism under section 42 of the Act that allows this.
So this will appear then for the public to look at in conjunction with everything else.
It has to be read with 10p 40032. The two of them will make the actual planning permission. That planning permission that was granted the 2010 application will continue if this is granted. So the two need to be read in conjunction.
Thank you.
Councillor Dick. I very much appreciate the comments that Councillor Driver have made, but I'd refer to previous application where we're talking about the implication of turning something down which has previously been accepted, and bearing in mind this is only in principle. The implications, not least of all, should it be appealed. My concerns certainly would apply to a full application, and they have been pretty well articulated by the representatives in terms of the impact, the wildlife impact assessment, and what I see is some holes in that, if you like. I'm not necessarily convinced that we've a true representation of the mitigation of the effects on the wildlife there. And I would also have some concerns about the practical application of planning application on land which does not belong to the applicant. But I feel, for those reasons, where there are no material alterations, that we really don't have any option but to accept this and would have to move. So.
Okay. Councillor Mail.
Yeah, Chair. I'm going to say I share totally Councillor Driver's concerns, and what is happening here, the fact is, I don't think this will ever happen either, and I think this is just maybe a way just to try and take it on longer to see if something can be done. I'm really not happy that it's not within the development plan or put forward, no matter what the excuse. So in this case, I'm going to second Councillor Driver on this one, that we actually refuse this.
Okay. Councillor Haslett.
Chair, if this had been a full application, recommendation, I think, with what is in front of us with regard to environmental impact, and there's nothing, then yes, I would have concern. However, we don't know what they're planning to put on the site, therefore I don't see how you can ask for an environmental impact at this stage. What we're being asked to look at is, if something acceptable came along, would we accept it? Well, to that I would say yes, but whether it is acceptable or not, that's the next stage. And as such, I think there is an outline or permission just now in principle, and I would second Councillor Dick and say that we agree with the recommendations in the report.
Thank you. Now the motion by the amendment.
Motion proposed by Councillor Drabra, seconded by Councillor Mall, is to refuse the application. So on second.
I was struggling so as to whether it's a competent motion. I'll tell you why. Basically, this is an application which is simply to vary the terms of a condition. How is the variation, given the plan permission principle granted previously, how is this extension making it contrary to structure plan policy domain?
If you look at the previous application, the conditions applied therein, the first condition, which the leader mentioned about earlier on, was the things were going to come in place by the end of that 3 year. They are not in place, therefore they're looking for an extension. So therefore that extension, what I'm suggesting is, should not be granted.
But the decision of the council before was, whether you agreed with it or not, the council's decision was to approve it because it complied with structure plan policy. Where I was struggling a bit is where this one should be refused because it suddenly doesn't comply.
Previously it was granted on a vote, and my suggestion at the time, and again it was supported by Councillor Moore at that particular time as well, was the motion was to refuse the application. So therefore in previous, when we're looking at this, it's been accepted by the council. And when principles stand, therefore I'm suggesting I'm not going to change the law because there was nothing proved to me or there will be a change in what's happened so far. So therefore policy D1, particularly chapters 1 through 4 and 5, are not being met.
Could I suggest, Chair, that 1A, this plan permission principle will expire 3 years from the date of this permission unless further applications for all of the matters specified in conditions below have been submitted to the planning authority within that time period. Can I suggest that they haven't been submitted to the planning authority? Because the only thing that's been submitted to the planning authority is an application for a continuation. They haven't addressed what's in the conditions. There's nothing in the conditions that's been addressed. Is that not a sufficient reason?
Mr. Sotty?
Basically, no, they didn't submit within the 3 years, but they did submit an application to vary the terms of that condition to effectively grant them a further 3 years. So the non-submission of the reserved matters isn't really ground for refusal.
Because what you're saying then is because you have said that you're allowed to give the application extension, I disagree with that. I've got to agree on principle and policies, therefore it just worries me that we're getting somewhere in here that I can't disagree as a member of this planning application committee, where somebody else can come along an applicant, and I'll certainly agree with those objectors where it seems to go on the developer side much more than the objector side, where we need to get a certain level playing field here. What I'm suggesting is the conditions in this application, when we've asked for an extension of one, the rest haven't been met.
I'm struggling again with this one. So you're obviously entitled to disagree with it. What I'm trying to tease out is what's the justification for this in terms of what's changed since the previous one. Why should a further extension not be granted?
That's the issue. There's been no change. That's the problem. If they come forward with a full application within the previous application, then it would be a problem. We would have to come to a full application.
Councillor Draper, while I completely understand what you're saying, I think the difficulty we're having is the council made a determination on the basis of the policy. The policy has not changed. The council is now trying, well, you're suggesting that the council consider making a different determination on exactly the same policy, and there is no change to point to. So how does that justified? I think is really the question. What justifies going in a different direction from the council's previous decision?
Councillor Haslett, we're extending the time scale, sorry, Chair. Councillor Haslett. Chair, I'm not planning to argue against my own case, but surely under 4.5 it quite clearly says that if we're not, if we didn't find it acceptable, then it should be refused. Now, maybe that's what Councillor Driver is coming for. He doesn't find the condition acceptable. Maybe that's the point that he should be looking at.
We're trying to present it as the word and the justification for it, so also you can't do it, never saying that. But, okay, I'll try to put it down.
The direction. And this application will be made under section 42. That says the plan can consider the condition which is subject to application. Alright? Should the plans of the variation of time condition to be acceptable, plans should be granted subject to various conditions. I don't deem that the time is acceptable. Is that clear?
So it's, yeah, so, well, again, the plan right, I think what you're saying is that because the application, the reserved matters effectively have not been submitted within the time scale, you want to say it's not an effective site any longer, and therefore you're not willing to give it a further extension of time period.
If 4.6 and accepting whether acceptable to vary time condition over further 3 years commence, consideration must be done whether there has been any material changes in policy or other circumstances since the original planning, and that's a few bullet points down there, for instance. So the principle of development, it wasn't in the last local development plan, it's not in the future local development plan. Landscape and visual impact has been clearly stated by the objectors. Impact, I'm actually quite concerned about road safety as well, because the input to the area will be through that underpass. The issues around with regard to hydrology and flooding and conservation and ecology. So that's the summary.
Suggestion from Mrs. Carter, the fact that it's not in the RDP, would that be something which well, I'm assuming that is the case, I haven't actually got a copy in front of me, but on the basis that it's not in the RDP, that makes it's premature in the adoption of the new LDP, and given that there's been no reserved matters submitted within the time there's questions about its time and its effectiveness. I'm sorry,
I understand what you're saying, and I don't mention local development plan. It wasn't in the last one, it's not in the last one, so there's been opportunities for the developer to go around and put it into the local development plan. That hasn't happened. Why has it not happened? There could be a lot of reasons here why it hasn't happened. I've suggested that in the discussions that have actually happened. So therefore, if that's not what they require, then I'm quite happy with that.
I'm just trying to tease out the reasoning, because we've got to have a reason for this, obviously, because there's a potential that goes to an appeal, but there's a council got to defend that.
An extension is not acceptable.
Can't say we're not adaptable, Archie.
Are you okay?
One tells one's worth. Councillor Whitley.
Well, I do want to actually ask. I mean, I think we've got to be really careful about this, but I would have assumed that the applicant quite reasonably would not have put it into the LDP as an item because they had the benefit of planning application upon it, a consent upon it. And I would just ask whether or not we are being reasonable in suggesting, because it's not an LDP, we can't extend it. I'm just a little bit concerned about this.
I think it's on the ground of prematurity in advance of the LDP actually being adopted, because the final settled position on the LDP of the council hasn't yet occurred.
Councillor McCarthy. The previous decision was filed, and at the end of the day, they had a debate, they had a vote at Arundel Area Committee. It's 3 years on, for very same reasons that there was an attempt to refuse it the first time. That should still be valid today, because if you read 4.6 there has been no change in council policy. The same policies in which it was acceptable to refuse it the last time should still be extant. You've also got the fact that there's been no changes to the actual policy of the council's development plan. Now, just talking about the council's development plan, it was a wrong then when it wasn't in the development plan. Now we're trying to rectify the wrong that was done. It probably should not have been granted the last time because it wasn't in the council's development plan. If it was granted, it should have been placed in the council's development plan. So since it's not in the council's development plan, that is a material change that can allow it to be refused.
I think, just out of clarity, it wasn't an allocated site, but there was policy support for it in the structure and plan policy, D9, as assessed by the previous area committee. That's a significant aspect. So it wasn't an allocated site. And I think the difficulty is, you've got to remember that we often think about allocations in relation to housing, and we can predict housing, but things like industrial development we can't predict, which is why the structure plan policy, I suspect, was written at that time to allow for eventualities coming forward in relation to industrial development.
I hear what you asked the same chair, but the point I'm making is it was granted permission by this authority. This authority did not update its local development plan during the process of the local development plan. It is not contained within the current local development plan. It's either been permission by this authority, but either way, it is not in the local development plan and therefore should not be granted planning permission.
Councillor Driver. Yeah, and when Janice mentioned D9 before, that's exactly what I was going on about. The reason why I mentioned the 18th or 16th of June 2010 was why I thought it was contrary to Dumfries and Galloway structure plan and policy D9. I still think the same. That's still in it. Whether the party disagreed with it, it was accepted by a vote or whatever, I still think it's against structure policy D9, particularly 1, 2, 4 and 5.
Councillor Wiki. Just to put it simply, Chair, as you know, I'm a fairly simple fellow. What's wrong with time expired? This planning application is time expired. We want an extension, and there's people here wanting to refuse that extension. Surely that should be a sufficiency without going into all this detail of planning applications and that sort of thing. We're here to decide whether a further 3-year extension is reasonable or not. They've had 3 years and nothing has happened, and we're willing to give them another 3 years. Some people would seem to be saying, no, we're not want to give them any extension in time, end of story. How often can they come back and do this?
As explained earlier, basically because of the submission prior to the expiry of the plan permission principle, that's honoured. So technically the permission has not yet expired until this application has been determined. How often could they do it? Well, that's a valid question. If they kept on doing it indefinitely, and you've heard the concern about it, this is not going to happen, it would be probably after X amount of times of the resubmitting and nothing happening. That's where I think you could say that there's no reasonable prospect of it going to happen, and it was always blighting a piece of land that was what it was going to be doing ad infinitum without ever coming to fruition. Paul, can you read back what you actually had? Because I think you'd worded something there that was
Yes, at the moment I've got the sort of the reasoning as being that the term extension is not acceptable as the site is premature, having not been made effective during the previous permission and not being allocated in the new LDP or proposed LDP.
Paula?
Yes.
Could I ask you to read them?
The motion proposed by Councillor Dryborough, seconded by Councillor Mail, is that to refuse the application on the grounds that the time extension is not acceptable as the site is premature, having not been made effective during the previous permission and not being allocated in the new proposed local development plan. The amendment proposed by Councillor Dick, seconded by Councillor Hitzlop, is to approve the application as per the report.
Good.
Chair,
Amendment.
can you vote with your microphone, please?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Councillor Mail?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor Dick?
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough?
Motion.
Councillor Geddes?
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy?
Motion.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland?
Amendment.
Councillor McCautry?
Motion.
Councillor McCall?
Motion.
Councillor McKee?
Motion.
Councillor Ogilvie?
Motion.
Councillor Tate?
Motion.
Councillor Stephen Thompson?
Amendment.
Councillor Ted Thompson?
Motion.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No. 6. David, you've got 9-7. 9-7. That's 9 votes for the motion, 7 for the amendment. The motion is carried. The committee is determined to refuse the application.
Okay, we'll move on to item 10. Application for very conditional limit planning permission O3P40012, conditional limit on building of extraction up to 10 years, to allow continuous extraction of peat for a further period of 25 years at must not be reverse east eggs. Lindsay.
Thank you. This first slide shows the location of Nutbury Moss. It lies directly to the north of the A75 and approximately 400 metres north of Lythertown. The second slide is a site plan which shows the site, which covers an area of approximately 90 hectares and has been used for the purposes of peat extraction since pre-World War II. The site is surrounded in the majority by flat open agricultural land, and directly to the south of the peat extraction site itself is the existing peat processing factory and a recently formed open storage area for finished and bagged peat products. This first photograph has been taken from the lay-by on the A75 looking north towards the application site. The peat storage mound and mobile plant are the only obvious upstanding features, as there are no buildings within the site. This is just a closer view of the site showing the peat storage mounds. This photograph has been taken from a minor road serving Todd Holes and Tully's Fields. Again, the storage mound is the only upstanding feature. This final photograph shows the general nature of the peat extraction site. It has been considered that the continuation of peat extraction is essential, at least in the short to mid-term, in maintaining a steady supply of minerals. Equally, the significant adverse environmental and ecological impacts are also recognised, together with the aim of the Scottish and UK governments to reduce carbon emissions and phase out the use of peat in horticulture. Consequently, it is considered that a reduced period of 10 years with a possible review at the end of that period is appropriate and reasonable. The proposals are considered to be in accordance with the development plan, and the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the varied condition allowing continuation of extraction for the further 10 years only.
Thank you. Any questions from Lindsay? We're not in session, just questions at the moment.
Councillor Oberman? The 10 they're asking for 20 plus, but you're saying 10, based on the UK government's move away from that for ecological reasons. Are we in line with everybody else? I would hate Dumfries and Galloway to have this 10-year thing, and everyone else has got 20 years, whatever. Are we in line with UK policy?
During consideration of the application, SNH provided us with advice, and there's only one other current application in Scotland for a continuation of working, which is in South Lanarkshire, and SNH have provided the same guidance to them as the advising a period of no more than 10 years.
Any further questions, Councillor Cotton?
Yeah, I thought it was the director that peat extraction had to stop altogether. Is that like 2025 or something? Did he put a firm date on it?
The Scottish Government have outlined their future plans to phase out the use of peat, particularly in horticulture. There is no legislation in place yet, and therefore that's why we've recommended a shorter timescale when it should be clearer what the UK and Scottish Government direction will be.
Okay. For more questions, we'll have a session. Councillor Bradley.
So I want to call the Community Councils where the applicant actually went and discussed this with the Community Council. Both Community Council went was Gretna and Wig and Gretna Green and Springfield, and I think they were going to East Riggs as well over that particular time. I have to say that the local Community Councils were very supportive of this application, and I would go with the recommendations on this particular thing.
Committees are determined to approve the application subject to conditions set out in the report.
Okay, item 11 has been withdrawn by the applicant. We'll move on to item 12, which is erection of a detached double garage with workshop with first floor and solid living accommodation at the Glade Stadium, Bowland. Sorry?
Jane, no looking for.
Right, I'll start again. The erection of detached double garage with workshop with first floor and solid living accommodation at the Glade Stadium, Bowland. Mr. Jinks.
Thank you. The application site is located in a fairly rural location, surrounded by open countryside with one house just located to the north. The proposal is for a garage at ground floor level and a gallery annex above. And it's to be located within the existing garden ground just to the south of the house. These are the elevations that are proposed. As you can see, it's a split level design. The access to the gallery annex is taken from the upper level, which is adjacent to the dwelling house, with the garages at the bottom. The proposed floor plans showing a bedroom, lounge, kitchen accommodation with the garage below. You can see from this slide the building is to be located just to the right hand side next to the white bollards. The area of ground has already been excavated, and that's a better picture showing the location of the garage. And again, just to the left of the slide, this just shows a short pan around looking west. The application site is just on the left, out of shot. And from this view you can see the site straight ahead, just beyond the bollards. So the application is recommended for approval subject to one condition, as per the report, section 4. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. James. Any questions? We're in session. Agreed? Councillor Dalry, you wish to say something?
I'm just looking at the policies, and I'm just wondering where D4 sits in all this. Because you could potentially say it's a building in the country.
Yeah. There is a condition which is recommended, which would prevent the annex being sold off as a separate house. It has to remain part of the same planning unit as the house.
Okay. Paul? Sorry, Councillor McKee.
Right, Chair. Given some of the experiences we've had in the past about these sorts of applications and granting permissions, is there anything to stop them converting that into a house?
Well, actually, they'd have to apply for planning permission to do that, and it would be subject to different policies. As I say, there is a condition recommended which would prevent the house from being lived in as separate accommodation. It has to remain part of the same planning unit as the house that's already there.
Can I take it that Granny can be here permanently? I'm not going to gas out or anything like that. I think this can be a permanent home for Granny.
Mr. Jinks?
As long as Granny wants his permanent home.
You took all out my list. So happy to agree. Okay, Paul?
Committee is determined to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Okay, item 13. Erection of steel portal frame vocational training line to Kirkcudbright Academy, St Mary's Line, Kirkcudbright. Judith Turnbull has changed. No, it's Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Judith's busy writing a report for the next committee, so thought it was expedient if I appeared instead. Just to go through the slides first of all. You can see the location plan here, it's replicated on page 153 of the committee papers. The site plan shows the context of the building. Application sites in red. You've got the academy buildings just to the kind of east-southeast. You'll also see at the top of this slide you've got the swimming pool. There's multi-use games area in the top right-hand side of this, the school gym. What's important to note is Castlemans, which is just to the south of the application site. And you'll notice the elevation is slightly diagonal to that, and there's intervening vegetation. Now that's referred to in the report, and some of the following photographs will also relate to that. Looking at the floor plan, that's what you've got there, the descriptions as per section 1.3 of the report. What you've got in here is an area that's been purpose designed to meet the requirements, and when you look at the proposed elevations, you're looking at a fairly functional single-span pitch roof building. Looking at the photographs, this is looking generally in an eastward direction towards the complex of existing school buildings at Kirkcudbright Academy. Where you see the T-sign on the pole, to the rear of that is the proposed location of the building, so it's got a kind of backcloth in context of fairly functional educational buildings. When you're looking from the actual application site, generally in a southwards direction, so this is towards Castlemans, the listed building, it's category C listed that I pointed out earlier. You've got this intervening vegetation, and this just demonstrates that obviously existing school buildings on the left-hand side of the slide. That's the elevation of Castlemans. It's facing in a northeasterly direction, and when you pan around, that's looking from the same location, looking towards the application site. So again, at the risk of repetition, there is intervening vegetation and screening there. Would assess the application, it's got to go to committee due to the fact it's an application made by the council, but the recommendation is to approve without the need for conditions.
Councillor Dalry again.
Just one comment, I'm happy to approve the recommendation. I'm just wondering about this, the applications for Dumfries and Galloway Council. with no objections coming forward. I thought there was a move to try and remove them from the agenda.
Unfortunately not. There was a change to Scottish Government legislation in February, which means any council interest applications where the council actually owns the land but isn't the applicant, they're no longer coming before you because they can be dealt with under delegated powers. But unfortunately, any council application where the applicant is the council has to come before yourselves, and there's no move to change it.
I'm sure everybody could see from the slides why Kakuba is an standing conservation area. I'm sure that was quite obvious from that. If we agree with this, I tell you that this will come as a great boost to the school. We've been looking for this for decades.
Councillor Hislop.
Chair, just wondering if there's a condition on it with regard to the fact that it's a vocational training unit. Will the people who will be benefiting from the vocational training be building it?
I think I agree with Councillor Galloway. It might not stand the thing without the training. Anyway, agreed.
Committee determined to approve the application unconditionally.
Thank you for calling these people.